A workshop meeting of the Board of Trustees of the McAllen Independent School District will be held Monday, February 28, 2018, beginning at 6:05 p.m. in the boardroom/administration building of the McAllen Independent School District at 2000 North 23rd Street, McAllen, Texas. At this meeting, there may be discussion by the board on the items and subject as listed as follow. A, call the meeting to order. 2, presentation and discussion of the MGT Consulting Group Facilities Education Master Plan. 3, discussion of renovation and/or construction of the high school science laboratories. And D, adjournment. So at 6:05, we will start the workshop. Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes, sir. First and foremost, I'd like to welcome Susan Zoller. Welcome back to McAllen.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you being here. We're excited to share our Facilities Education Master Plan and what MGT has for us. And we have Ruben Trevino and Dr. Pereira and Zoe Ibarra that will be presenting. So at this point, I will turn the floor over to Dr. Pereira.
Well, thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. This afternoon, we'll be speaking to all 4 goals of our strategic plan. Goal 1 was be student achievement. Goal 2, people development. Goal 3, facilities. And then Goal 4, financial priorities. In the spring of 2016, MGT Consulting was hired to conduct a study and to present the findings of this comprehensive audit. The report detailed educational standards associated with our programs, enrollment and enrollment projections, and building capacities and utilization. The report was also about an overall facility assessment score, which included building condition, education suitability, grounds or site condition, and technology. The last part of the report spoke to community input and garnered information about possible options that the district could consider. All this was packaged and presented to the board. The data from the report serves us as a guide for long-term planning. And later, 19 months later, MGT Consulting was hired again to conduct a facilities education master plan using the assessment data from the facilities audit. The master plan is a living document. And today we have a representative from MGT, Ms. Susan Zoller, here to walk us through the chunks of information that together make up the facilities master plan. In addition to her presentation, we have added all of the work that facilities maintenance and operation has completed since the snapshot of the time of that study, which was again 19 months ago. And also we'll see examples of replacement life cycle data, where we are and how we're progressing through there, both long-term and short-term goals. After that, we'll move on to the second item on the workshop and talk science labs. Dr. Ibarra will present her findings about the equipment standards and the requirements for the various labs. And then Ruben Trevino here to my right will talk to us about facility options as it pertains to either the renovation or the construction and/or of new labs. Now, both these items are a workshop format, so it's open for discussion as we walk through there. I have Ms. Zoller, she's ready to roll, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to her and her presentation and let her begin.
Thank you so much. It's nice to see all of you again. This has been one of my favorite projects, so I may make a mistake or something tonight so I don't have to finish. I'd love to come back and
Just
work with you again. There is something to say for that, Mr. Farina, yes. So you've had the bulk of a master plan for about 1.5 years now. We came in and did an amazing data collection process with you and gave you that. What was missing is kind of the what do we do with that? How do we put that together? What do we do first? What do we do next? What are the issues that we need to resolve? And so that's really what I want to come back and share with you. But it's been long enough. I hadn't realized it was 19 months, but it's been long enough. I thought it might be helpful for you and for any other folks to remember kind of what we did. So in this report, we're going to, I want to do a brief review about the project, what we did, why we did it, and so forth. I want to do a very brief review on the data. We gathered a lot of information about each of your schools, and we listened to your community in a variety of settings across the district, including at Rotary Club meetings and so forth. and gathered that information from an online survey, and I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to think about the capacity and the utilization of your buildings, and then I really do want to get into the recommendations. And the recommendations that we're providing for you are MGTs. You may decide that you love them, you're going to adopt them all perfectly, just as we've put them together. You may not like any of them. They are our findings based on what we discovered as we were here in the district and what we heard from your community, and based on what we think would make sense for you as a district, starting now and moving 10 years out. That's a long time, and that's a very murky crystal ball. 3 years out, we can kind of see what the direction the district might be going. 10 years out, that ball gets very murky, and we need to make sure that you continue to check that ball, to gather more data and put it in there and look at it again, so that we're not making decisions 10 years from now that were based on good information now, but it's not accurate 10 years out, right? And we've put that into a couple phases, and I'll explain that here in a minute. So when we started a long time ago, the district was in a process of rearranging the facilities department. Mr. Trevino was relatively new when I first came in, and there was lots of concern about what was the condition of our buildings, what did we need, what was the circumstances, and so forth. So we conducted a complete assessment of all of the district's schools. That meant that somebody who was an architect-engineer type, as opposed to me, I'm an educator type, an architect-engineer type, walked every one of your buildings and climbed on the roof and looked at the windows and the doors and all of that. And then somebody like me walked the building with the principal to think about how that education worked in that space. We also thought about your capacity, and capacity is not a hard number. Capacity is a decision. So if an architect says, I'm going to build you a building of 500, that number only is true for the day you cut the ribbon. The very next day, the principal can change that capacity by changing a third grade classroom into a special ed self-contained room. Or they can put a music room in there, and it changes the capacity. How you use a building changes the capacity. So we looked at it based on how it was currently being used and how it could be used into the future. We thought about some various scenarios. You have one of the longest, thinnest districts, I love the maps, that we work in. Some of them are sort of amoeba shaped, and some of them have odd and interesting pieces. Fulton County, Georgia is a donut, and Atlanta is the whole, right? So each district has a set of characteristics that we have to kind of factor into this. Your district is growing out to the north, and the student population is shrinking down in the south. Well, that's easy to solve on paper. You just pick up 200 kids from the north and move them to the south. It doesn't work quite so well when it's real kids, right? And real families. So we had to think about various scenarios that might work, and I'll share those with you here in a little bit. And then we have to think about what's this going to cost. We knew that you had just had a very large bond for $300 million that was not approved by your community. So we needed to make sure that we factored in what are the costs to fix your buildings, to address the needs that you have, and how are you going to be able to support that. I'll give you some information about that too. So way back, we had conversations with this group thinking about, okay, we've gathered all this data. What do we want to say is excellent? What do we want to say is good, fair, poor, and unsatisfactory? And we created these two kind of rainbows, if you will, to explain what we would call a building that met one or another of these criteria. So using your rainbow system that you use to explain what schools are like in your district, how well they're performing for students and so forth. Dark blue is excellent, means a score over 90. Light blue is 80 to 89. Green is fair. Yellow is poor. And below 60 is unsatisfactory. We work in school districts all across the country, and it's unusual to find no buildings that are unsatisfactory. You should feel really good that you have no buildings that were unsatisfactory, with one kind of asterisk, and that was the Achieve Early College. If you only evaluated the portable buildings that you had, that facility was unsatisfactory. But the fact that the students spend so much of their time at the community college, in community college classrooms, we raised the score on that. So you actually have no buildings that are currently scored at unsatisfactory. That's very unusual, and you should feel terrific about that. It means you have been doing a lot of maintenance, because you have some old buildings, not as old as some other school districts, but you have some buildings that are old, and it means you have to keep them up. You know what it takes to keep your home up. You know what it takes to keep your business up if you're a business person. The second half of this chart is the utilization of the building. So again, how fully utilized is a school? If you think about an elementary school and you have a third grade classroom, when Mrs. Jones's students leave her third grade classroom and go to the art room or go to the PE space, that room sits empty. That means that space is not being utilized. Very few schools try to pack every space every period. You have a system of scheduling at your middle schools that leaves rooms open 3 periods a day. There's nothing good or bad about that. It's just a fact. That changes your utilization. It does mean that you could put more kids into each of your middle schools if you chose to utilize those rooms differently. So all of that data had to get put together to think about how fully utilized your buildings are. So this is the data summary of all of your schools. I know it's kind of an eye chart, and I'm glad to see that you each have a copy of it, so we don't have to test you on your 2020 vision, right? So what we've put in here is the combined score. And remember, the combined score is based on the 4 assessments that we did. Those 4 assessments are building condition, that architect or engineer that walked your roof, checked your boilers, checked your chillers, checked the condition of your plumbing. The site condition, again, they walked around the building, looked at the condition of your sidewalks and your parking lots and your playgrounds and all of that. Then educational suitability, which looks at how well the building supports the instructional program. And the last is technology readiness. If you look underneath the heading combined score, it says 40, 40, 10, 10. That means we took the score for the building condition and multiplied it times 40%. We took the score for educational suitability and multiplied it times 40%. Site score and technology were both multiplied times 10% to create this combined score. And it's the combined score that we regularly use in places all across the country to give us a first priority blush, right? How does this building compare with that building, using all 4 of those assessments as the first blush? And you can see on this list, Alvarez Elementary School scored a 67.45 and is shown in the yellow, which means it's not excellent, good, or fair. But you can see you also have Fields and Hendricks and Perez and Sanchez and Big Pensavala that scored in the light blue. You don't have any schools in the excellent range. It's not too surprising given the age of most of your buildings, but you have lots of schools that are in the green and the blue, and should feel really good about the fact that you have schools like that. The next column over is the capacity of each building, right? How many children could you put into that school? And then the last column is what we projected based on our long-term enrollment picture. Where do we think that building is going to be out in 2022? And you can see that you have Alvarez, for example, was projected to only be at 60% of utilization. That's lower than where we would want it to be. We recommend 80 to 90% utilization in order to still leave some space for flexibility, but still have a utilized building that doesn't have empty spaces that that we're having to heat and cool, and that Ruben is trying to take care of, that there's nobody in. However, you also have Gonzales projected to be at 176%. 176% is problematic for a couple reasons. One, we either have kids hanging from the chandeliers, or we have taken kids and put them in spaces that we would normally not use for a classroom of children. Or we have portable city out there. We were working in a school district outside of Atlanta, and one of their elementary schools had 27 portables. That's a lot. That's a lot, because yes, you can put kids in a portable building, but it means the core facilities in the building, the restroom, the library, the cafeteria are all undersized, right? The same thing is true at Gonzales. You have too many children in that building. We can't feel good about leaving that many kids in a building. Despite the wonderful educational opportunities that are happening there, there's something that is problematic about that. They may not have an art room, they may not have a music room, they may be on the stage, they may be crammed in a closet. Having that kind of a percentage up there is problematic from our typical perspective. And you can see the other one at the elementary level that's that way as Milam, right? So if you go to the next slide,
Wait,
you'll see.
Before you go to that
Please.
slide, that's based on 2015, 2016 data. And the combined score, the 40, 40, 10, 10, has none of the upgrades that have done since 2015, 2016.
Hold that question, because we have done the upgrades, and you'll get to see those in just a
Okay,
few
but
minutes.
that slide right there is
That is
2015,
right.
2016.
Right. Yeah, great question,
When
thank
you
you.
count the marquee, it's going to go down a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so the next slide has the same reminder about the middle schools and high schools. You can see the combined score again at the 40, 40, 10, 10, the capacity and the projected utilization. And there, it's Fossum and Morris Middle Schools that looked like they were going to be over enrolled. And at the high school, it's Mac High and Memorial. Rowe still looked like it was going to be in an okay kind of position relative to size, but Mac High and Memorial looked like they were going to be overcrowded. So as a whole, as I say, as a district, you should feel really good about that last row of the district average. The combined score is not bad, it's kind of middle of the road. You have some schools that are in really good shape, you have some schools that are not. And your overall district utilization at 84% is really good, but you have some outliers that you need to worry about, okay?
So Ms. Zeller, the 24,901, that is based on what number? District average total 7459, the attendance 24,901, is that 1516?
1516.
Okay.
What is the,
And it was based on our walkthrough during 1516 and the use of the building at that point, right? I'm sorry, what was another question?
what is the other school average total? What is the other school average?
Achieve and Lamar
Oh, okay.
are the two schools that we didn't put up with your high school, in part because Achieve is such an outlier, right? Lamar, we probably could have put it up in there. And Achieve College has no capacity shown because the kids are mainly in the college classrooms, right? And they are counted at their home high school.
But right now, it's Portable Town.
It is
not
Portable City. It is Portable City. I went past it today, next to the new north classroom building at the college. It's beautiful. Yeah. Okay. So, with that as background, you asked us to think about, what? So what should we do about that? And part of what we recognized when we were here is that you had some spaces that belonged to the district, but that you weren't fully utilizing as district space. And we've identified some of them here. There may be some others. We didn't do a full inventory of all of your district properties. There may be some other properties that you may want to be thinking about that we were unaware of. But we do know that in school districts across the country, if the Head Start students are located in the elementary school where they are most likely to continue, they are most likely to continue there rather than choosing another place. But having Head Start in a different facility tends to increase the likelihood that they'll go to a different facility and not necessarily stay in their same elementary school. So where possible, all across the country, we're doing some work right now with Milwaukee, and we're making the same recommendation for them. If possible, get your preschool kids in the school where they might be able to stay for the length of their elementary school. So Hidalgo County Head Start classes, if possible, move them into your elementary schools. Obviously, with Gonzales already at 100 and some odd percent, you don't have very empty spaces in Gonzales to put Head Start kids in there, but you do have some elementary schools where you could put the students who belong in there. And there are some other empty spaces that you might be able to use. And that's the old Austin school where the Hidalgo Head Start is right now. The old Thigpen school is I'm sorry?
I was saying it was there, and now it's at Navarro.
So, repurposing or selling the old Thigpen school that you don't need at this point. You've built a beautiful new Thigpen Zavala school. It looks like it's a space that you could repurpose. And then you have special ed offices in a building that could be moved into some of your empty spaces in your schools, utilizing the empty spaces and perhaps repurposing or selling that building as well. And it looks as though there's some construction going on in commercial spaces here. It looks like there's some fewer empty spaces than when I was here before, so it looked like that is some possibilities for dollars. And what we usually say to people is that right now you are keeping those spaces open. You're spending money on keeping those spaces. If you didn't have those spaces, if you didn't need to condition those spaces, if you didn't need to provide security for those spaces, heat, lights, water, all of those kinds of things, those dollars could be reallocated either to doing something for construction, or doing something for science equipment, or doing something for something. Because I know there's a limited size to your bucket, and if you don't have to spend it in one place, you could choose to spend it and reallocate it into another. Okay? So, the enrollment we had given you was 2 years old. And one of the things that we know is that children do not arrive in neat, tidy bundles of 27. They don't leave in neat, tidy bundles of 27 at any time. And so you have to keep thinking about your enrollment, because it can change.
Susan, real quick,
Please.
we want to specify on the old Austin School where our Head Start is located. Ruben, the address to that one? I know the location.
We know
I
where
just don't
Austin
know.
Street
The
is.
address,
Before Bicentennial.
the address, it's south of Navarro,
Atlanta.
1 block and a half
South.
south,
of Navarro.
Where? South of Navarro.
south of
South
Navarro.
of Navarro.
Yes,
So on
But
here,
not-
where is
that's-
it?
Which is that one that the
That's-
migrant is,
Where the migrant program is.
what's the name of it?
Okay, that's where the Head Start's at right now,
No.
right?
That's
No.
one of the hit starts.
yes.
One of them.
One of the head
You're
starts.
talking about 15th, 16th, and Houston,
Right.
but that's not Austin.
What's the name of that school?
That's where the,
That's where the
It's
migrant
the old
program is.
Austin.
yeah, that's the old, that's the
Because on the building it
Okay,
says
what's-
Austin.
Okay, what's the one over there by 21st Street? Where's Bebon, Dr. Bebon?
She was there at that location.
But then before that, she was
Here's Lamar.
off of 21st Street somewhere, south of Hackberry.
So,
No, it wasn't Crockett. Crockett's on Main and Tamarack.
because the building I was,
Yeah.
with the migrant, she was there and it says Austin on the building and that's where the migrant program was. And that's where one of the Head Starts was. But then I understood that you were gonna move them to
That's part of-
Navarro, right?
That's part of the plan.
But you haven't already moved them
No.
yet.
they're still in there.
Yes, sir. That's part of the plan. If we
So where is it again?
South of Navarro.
Right here. Or Navarro is south.
It's
What's the address?
Hackberry, so,
Yeah.
I guess in
Hackberry and
Navarro.
21st, right?
It's between Wilson
Yeah.
and Alvarez, and it's Navarro, it's Hackberry
And
just
21st,
south.
it's
Yeah.
Hackberry
Yeah.
and 21st.
Now, Navarro, yeah.
Navarro is.
Yeah.
That's,
And what are you
Oh, you have
asking?
that turn in, it's not on.
Austin, the old
you
Austin.
have to turn inside.
Old Austin is due south
Yes,
Uh-huh.
of that.
I didn't even know
That
that
would be on 21st Street.
that's not a bad,
It's a whole block.
But yeah, it's a whole block.
It's a whole
Yeah.
It's not a
block.
bad piece
Kinda
of
looks
property
like
at all. Yeah.
It's at the
Yeah.
corner of Fur and 21st.
and it was built at the same time as Big Pen and probably the original fields and,
We're scared.
So what?
We don't, we want to make sure that the charter doesn't come in and
Oh, yeah, kill us.
That's Fur and 21st Street.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
If we put it up for sale, somebody puts it in, do we have to sell it to them?
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That's exactly what we need to do.
Just for clarification also, the special education building is the one on South 17th Street, the old ING.
yes.
That's the one.
Old ING.
Yes, sir.
Make an awesome club there, I'm sure.
I mean, it really,
Wait, it's the old ING what?
the old ING Center on South 17th, opposite of the patio restaurant, all the way
And
at
that's-
the end of the street.
And Galveston.
Right,
In front of
It's a
Juanita's
block,
Flower Shop.
2 blocks west of the City Hall.
right.
That's the one.
That's the old Austin, right?
Yeah.
The original Austin, right?
Yes, the original Austin.
Yes.
That's why I'm
And then it
saying,
was an ING center for a long time.
Then it was an
Yes.
ING center.
so when you're calling it the old Austin, isn't that the same thing as special education building?
No, the
No.
special education building is the one on South 17th. I guess I wasn't aware that was the old Austin. What we're talking about is the one on 21st Street.
It's the one
that we're
that's
talking
labeled
about.
Austin
So
now.
they're talking
It's
Okay,
the
now
Austin,
it's a- okay.
it's labeled Austin one stop as per the how Hidalgo County goes by.
And that's on
The Head
Fur
Start
and.
Yes.
But we're thinking of two Austin schools.
Yeah, right.
That confusing.
But they're labeled different. One's
Just like
labeled
it was
Austin,
always
one's
confusing with Sam Houston downtown, even
Right.
though we had sold it to the city.
Right.
It still is referred to as the Sam Houston, even
Right.
though the new one was over on the west side.
Okay.
I should have made a recommendation about naming protocols.
Probably not named the same school, another school with the same name.
Got a regular.
We got one for that.
So when we originally had thought about what to do in this district, maybe you could show the next slide. This is in your original report as our original enrollment projection. So 2016-17, you can see it's under 25, and by the time you get out to 21-22, it was projected at 20,942. Again, it's, the closer we are to today, the easier and clearer the enrollment numbers are. The farther out you get, the more dusty, dirty they get. So look at the next one that is based on the next 3 years. We now think you're going to be at 21,973.
21, 20.
So flip back to the last one if you would, Dr. B. So we thought you were going to be at 20,942. We now think you're going to be at 21,973. That's a big difference. And that hasn't happened by accident. As we've been thinking about this, go ahead. We know there's been some effort on your part to attempt to change the trajectory. There is a slowing in the enrollment decline. The community is getting older, and the community is, but there is a slowing in the line, right? We're seeing a leveling off and potentially a tip up. You are doing a better job of attracting new students and retaining students, from what we can see. And, I mean, the banners outside this building suggest that you have done a good job of making sure that people are aware of your progress in really supporting what you're about, which is student achievement. It's important that we provide outstanding student opportunities here, and you've been doing that. That enrollment projection reflects a change. It would not be there if you had done nothing, okay? And the last bullet I want to call your attention to, because Ruben will get a chance to show you in a few minutes, you have been improving your buildings inside and out since we were here and did that assessment. Since we were here and did all those 4 assessments that we put together into that combined score, the FMO department has not been sitting on their hands. With your help, they have been doing some of the work to address some of the deficiencies that were found in that original report. So we recommend that you keep watching and act as needed. Keep watching at your enrollment and act on the plans based on what's actually happening, not just on what we said might be happening, because it could change. So let's look at Phase 2. Phase 1, as you recall, is taking excess space, reutilizing it, selling it, or repurposing it. Phase 2 has 2 priorities. Priority 1 is addressing the schools that have a combined score of less than 70 and/or a utilization of over 120. So those were the ones that were in the red on the utilization column and had a combined score of less than 70. Those are the ones that we think you should take on first, that you should address their needs first. Priority 2 schools are those with a combined score of less than 75 and a utilization of over 110. They're not as pressing as the priority 1, but they still have some needs. So let's see what that looks like.
I'm gonna go back to the question that Trustee Alizada said, these new numbers that you're giving us that categorize priority 1, priority 2, are those already with the plugged in changes that Ruben has made?
You'll see those in just a minute.
They're not.
Well, okay.
So the Phase 2 Priority 1 schools are Alvarez, Gonzalez, Houston, Jackson, Milam, Brown, Morris, and Achieve Early College, based on the combined score, and the 3 that have projected utilization over 120 are Gonzalez, Milam, and Morris. So given that, we think you ought to do work in those schools. These are our recommendations. Facility renovation at Alvarez, and you can see what the budget estimate is, and I can give you where those budget estimates come from in just a few minutes. Gonzales, to adjust the boundaries to balance enrollment. Houston, a facility renovation. Jackson, a facility renovation. Milam, a facility renovation, and perhaps a boundary adjustment with the renovated Jackson, moving students to Jackson. And I know that you have open enrollment, so us saying move students here and there is sort of moot, because parents can choose to go anywhere. Our goal is to create some renovated facilities that parents will say, oh, man, look at that, I could go over there, and that's the facility that I would have that might be more attractive. But that will begin to move all of these priority 1 schools up in terms of their overall score. You'll look at the next line, and it says new elementary school. In order to address the overcrowding in the north side of the district, we are still recommending that you consider putting in a new elementary school on the north side at some point. It might be 3 years out, it might be 5 years out, it might be 10 years out, depending upon the enrollment and what happens here over the next several years. But right now, you've got several buildings in that part of the city that are already overcrowded and already facing the kind of kids hanging from the chandeliers that we talked about earlier. So we think you need to budget and plan for building a new elementary school out in that part of the city in the next 3, maybe 5, might be as far out as 10, but that's a need that you're going to have. Facility renovation for Brown, facility addition and boundary adjustment, again, with De Leon for Morris Middle School, and then for Achieve Early College, we still think it would be a wonderful opportunity to place the Achieve Early College students at the Lincoln campus. You have all that space right there on the main road just across the street from the community college. Put a facility out there. You still have all the fields out behind for the middle school students to use as part of their PE space. But you would have a permanent facility within walking distance and close enough for those Achieve kids to actually go there.
I have a question.
Please.
That number includes the square footage, it includes new supplies, desks, things like that, and then it has a little bit of a room for wiggle room, right? That number is not just a facility number. It's desk, it's equipment.
It is, it definitely includes the soft costs and desks and equipment, but it does not have a inflation factor if that doesn't happen for 10 years, right?
Right, but it doesn't have to right now.
So it's based on, right.
Yeah, okay, because earlier you'd given us the square footage, so if you just, the square footage of an elementary school was $193.08, so if you divide that up by square footage, it doesn't equal the 3 million, so I was wondering what got you there, so it's those other costs.
Okay,
I have a question.
Please.
Or an observation. And the recommendations I kind of peeked ahead. There's also no recommendations yet, or did y'all consider consolidating schools? For example, Bonham projected 48% with Roosevelt, which is 58%. They're right close to each other. Lincoln, De Leon are pretty close, and they're projected at 66 and 64%. Was that something you looked at, or?
absolutely. Yeah, in your report, you will find right after phase 1, there's an opening paragraph that says you've got to be paying attention to your enrollment, and if your enrollment continues to grow and get bigger, you may not need to do this, but if your enrollment shrinks, you are probably going to need to think about some of those consolidations, and we identify elementary consolidations across the district and how you might do that.
If we were to consolidate, and then again, just my opinion, right, I haven't spoken to anybody about this, but Lincoln and De Leon, for example, then you have facility there where you can move.
Or you could put
Achieve there is.
In order to do that, I'm carrying numbers around in my head. I believe you would need to think about changing the middle school schedule so that you have greater utilization of the building. So you might have to have kids backfilling into classrooms that right now the teachers have an empty classroom 3 periods a day, 2 planning periods and 1 lunch period. So we might have to change the schedule a little bit in order to address that.
So let's say hypothetically, I hate to admit this, that if Mr. Alvarado's suggestion would make sense, because I've oftentimes thought about that too, and it's a discussion that I know last time we were here, we talked about. The projected number of money that we would have to spend at Lincoln wouldn't be that number, right? Because we wouldn't have to build a building, we wouldn't need the $12,244,000.
Right, right. You could put Achieve there.
Right.
Might have to do some minor renovation or things in there, but you certainly wouldn't be building a whole new section.
Lincoln's under 262.
Yeah, we gotta go.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
Are we already talking, or are we still presenting? Because I have another thought with Lincoln, but I can wait until we get to that point.
It's up to you.
Shoot it now, man.
Shoot it.
Well, you know, and I don't want to get too heavy, but it's going to get heavy. I mean, obviously, we got some really hard decisions here to make. And the original plan was to put the International Baccalaureate in that space directly to the south of Lincoln. And for a few years, I was kind of leaning towards doing what was suggested. But the original plan for the Achieve Early High School was that they were in STC. That was the only reason we even had them on that campus, was we had a building space as a base, because the reality, they're in classrooms. It was when they grew to a point where they couldn't accommodate us anymore in one of the buildings that we brought in the portables, and they've been moved around. They were in other locations. They've been there for a while now. But really, that's just a base for a couple of classes, because the reality, they're back in the STC. I think it makes sense now that they've added buildings there. Can we figure out a way to get back into a building space just as a base? I think last time it only took like half a floor for counselors and administration.
400 kids.
Monday?
It's 400 kids.
Exactly. But they're always in somewhere else. They're not like they are in a typical building. And if we're allowed or figure a way that they could get back on there, then maybe the International Baccalaureate with some upgrades. And I think you have to be looking at science labs and the like as if they were at a college level, definitely a high school level. It can't be a middle school. So there's a cost there. And maybe in the International Baccalaureate and the option kids could go into the Lincoln space.
I will tell you.
And have Lamar be surplus space.
Well, I
Or
think
something.
I think it makes sense. We're kind of, and bless you. There's obviously a lot of dominoes. We have to even agree on that. But one idea would be that we get out of this space, we get out of Crockett space, convert that to an administration building like other school districts have done, and then sell this. The city's been very much interested in this land space here, and so maybe that's a real possibility.
My only add-on to that is that we don't make the same mistake again, converting a middle school into a high school, like we did at Memorial. And God knows we suffered. Classrooms are smaller, hallways are smaller. We have to think about that aspect of it. Because you are going to bring in 600 kids into a high school setting into a middle school building. The kids are bigger, they require more space, different learning techniques. So we certainly have to explore that aspect of just turning Lincoln into a IB options campus.
We already have De Leon that's already an IB, so you could have De Leon be 6th through 12th grade IB campus, and with the IB. and
But
also-
still, it's still
It's the
built
same-
as a
yes.
middle school.
Right, right.
You know, now that you say that, it does make some sense that it could be a 6 through 12.
Yeah, the
And we just have to
NYP.
make sure, because you and I are on the same page, and I'm sure we all are, we can't do that again. We have to be prepared that we're going to do this, that we're going to put science labs, and we're going to have to revisit this, if that's an option. That De Leon's gonna have to have upgrade science labs. Minimum college, high school, definitely college, but it would be best.
But even hallways are smaller, roofs or ceilings are lower, classrooms are smaller. There's just a whole, kids are 30% bigger in high school than they are in middle school. And you just gotta,
Texas standards don't differentiate between the two of them, though. It's crazy.
then Texas standards are probably not right.
Yeah, I mean, they all say 700 square foot regardless of
But you do
age of
also,
kids.
at De Leon, you do have different entrances because that's what Department of Technology was. So you could have options, could be its own campus.
But you got
And-
kids from that part of town driving all the way to that part of town that are in IB. Just another thought.
Yeah.
What other location do you think? Or you're talking about De Leon?
No, I was just talking about De Leon has different entrances, so you could, have a couple different,
Configurations, yeah. The beauty about it is you got major thoroughfares that get our buses and people transported to that location. You really do. Ware Road, 29th Street,
Options.
obviously 23rd
Options at
Street, and
Lincoln.
you got Nolana right there, and then you got the
Yeah.
other one on the other, was it
With
Buddy Owens on the other side? So
College.
it's a good avenue to get
Just keep IB.
transportation into that location.
I think the only other thing is too, is STC, there's been some chatter the last couple of years that they would help renovate Lincoln if we were to achieve.
They want us off their campus.
Right, so I
And
think
that's very clear. I've
we
spoken
need
to
to talk to them.
Write the check.
Right. I know I asked Dr. Reed 2 years ago, and I don't want to throw a figure out, but she said that they would be open to helping us renovate that and early achieve, and they would make a bus route for our kids, and yeah, I don't think we probably need to revisit.
Well, without
sitting
throwing
with
out a
them.
number, that number has changed
Right.
drastically, though.
Is it a lot
Just-
lower?
Well, yeah, because they finished their bond money. I'll tell you, when we went to that lunch appreciation, that they had for the,
School boards.
all the school boards, she took me outside, she goes, "Look out there, tell me what you see."
Portables.
And she wanted me to say portables, and I said, "There's a beautiful new building that our kids should be in." And needless to say, she didn't want to talk to me for the rest of the day, but that's okay. That seems to be the
But
case
is
with
she-
me when I tell people how I feel, but
Is she
that's the
insinuating
truth.
I
that
still
that
like
we
it.
spend our money and build it on their land?
No,
Or
that
is she
she's
saying
She
we
wants
need
us
to
out.
renovate Lincoln?
Lincoln.
Because we're close by and we
Right.
can build a walkover.
And back then,
no,
she
no.
also said she would like the land, to possibly build a building there that we could use, but I don't know if they have the funds for that, but.
And Lincoln is still in play with the city. Don't forget that they've come to us looking for the,
Right.
For the drainage area, but,
Well, whatever happens, the pond has to go in, so.
correct.
Either way, yeah.
Correct.
Were you, when we talked about McTie, the McTie building, you were here?
Mhm.
And we talked about the south, about where the pond is, about incorporating a building that would be IB, even somewhat administration building, would be used, built, I hate to use the word 21st century type building, and it would be used for IB and for a lot of the specialty things that we do on that particular,
At Lincoln?
On that
at
lot.
Lincoln, on the lot to the
Yeah, on the
south.
empty lot.
right, exactly.
Is it that big?
It's
big.
own
Well,
building.
you have to also consider high school, then you have to consider parking, because there is no parking for high schools unless you go to the north side of that building.
And that's why I think the De Leon may make the most sense and make that,
They have a
And I
lot of
think when you
parking.
look at costs and these costs here, it'd be a lot less when you do that. And that may be the better way to go.
As much as I appreciate the discussion, let's not forget, these are simple recommendations, and we do have to continue with the workshop, because we have to talk about science labs.
We have
So,
one
Yes.
more, we have priority 2.
Thank you, ma'am.
So
I know
we'll
where
look
to
at,
go.
at that.
Yeah, we can be here all night.
I'm ready to pull it. That's,
Yeah, they're projected, just one more thing about De Leon, they're projected that we're gonna be less 281 people at De Leon, so that's. just
Right.
It
Okay.
actually may work to our advantage,
Go
to the
Lions.
point you raised,
Your daughter going to be alive?
which I like, by the way.
Okay, priority 2, there we go. So these were the schools that have the combined score of less than 75 and the utilization 110 to 120. The biggest one there is Mac High for utilization, but you can see the other scores for the schools involved. So this would raise, I neglected to mention, I apologize. Notice the 90, 90, 90 across the top? That would bring, the dollars allocated would bring the scores up to a score of 90 all the way across, rather than where they currently are. Bonham, for example, is a 74. So that's what the dollars allocated on the next slide are intended to do. Same with the priority one. So these are the budget estimates based on this. You can see that we are recommending a renovation at McAllen High School. There's a large amount of dollars in that budget for that, because we were looking at it as a complete renovation, as well as an addition for an additional 200 students in order to meet the current overcrowding. That's probably a bigger budget than you need if you're only doing some minor renovation and updating, right? But if we bring the whole school up to 90, that's what it would cost. That's why that number is as high as that. And we did put some money in for Lamar, because right now that building is also scoring at less than 75%. So that budget is 67 million for the priority 2 items. I think the next slide just makes clear the facility costs. These are not based on a line item budget for each item that would need to happen at each school. This is a school budget based on the cost per square foot, using regional data, as you can see, the 2017 annual school construction report, using some local information. You can see the square feet we typically allocate for students, the number of students at the school, and the cost per gross square foot for an elementary, middle school, and high school. And we had originally given you the line at the bottom there, bring the building to 90, the suitability only to 80, the technology to 100, and the site to 90, and we had estimated for you as a total 152 million. But the proposal that we've given you now, these recommendations, is significantly less than that, and has changed it all to 90 rather than some of them to 90 and some to 80 and so forth. If you want to know what the estimates are with changing those percentages, I can run those through the system and get you those percentages as well, if that would be helpful.
Trustee Vella.
Touches how many campuses, that total? 18? Am I didn't count
We'd
it
have to
up,
go,
but-
we'd have to go back. Can you go back a slide, Dr. B?
12,
2,
13,
3,
14, 15 plus one new one, 15 campuses and a new campus. So
and then
16
no,
campuses.
16. Okay. Okay, I think the last slide is just a summary. So 16 campuses, 135, including a brand new elementary school out to the north side of the district. Okay.
Just before you continue, Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
this might help me, because right now we're in listening mode, but possibly we can have a workshop for us where we can discuss this among ourselves, where obviously with administration on what we're doing right now. Just some ideas. Is there some of these recommendations we all agree on? You know, is there some that we don't, we have new ideas? I think that would help me knowing if I have something else, because then I'll just listen right now and knowing, jot my notes.
We can schedule that.
What do y'all think? I mean,
Well, I thought we were gonna start to frame, you know.
well, yeah, right.
The low-hanging fruit is, you know, if we can agree on the low-hanging fruit, we can give administration things to get started on. And then the things that are gonna be projected out, you know, 5 to 10, then another workshop will make sense. But I think there's some 0 to 3 that we can make some conversations happen. It's not gonna happen this year, and it may not even happen next, but I would hate for us to walk away from this broad stroke, fresh conversation, because some really great ideas have been already thrown out that we have somebody with a whiteboard or scribe can already start jotting them down. I think we'd make some gains. Because there's some really low-hanging fruit that are so obvious here that I think we all can agree on. Like, I don't know how everybody feels, but and I know, I mean, having done facility consolidations, the first one is a hard one. The first move, because then the others fall into play. And I think the first move is the one Debbie just mentioned, that can be a doable thing rather sooner than later. Because I don't think that Lamar campus is suited for a lot of reasons. Now the security has come up. So do we put a lot more money in security there if the students are not the best place for them? So does it make sense to have an IB campus, as you suggested? And if so, what would that cost? So that would be my suggestions as the first move. I'm not saying we're gonna do it, but that would make sense to be the
Give us
first
a
move.
scenario, what would it cost if we did this?
Yeah. And then that goes to our second move is Lincoln. What would it cost to do Lincoln for Achieve Early College, high school there? But going back to STC, because at one point she was talking $2 to $3 million to help us. Is that even still in play? If it's not, then we're on our own. If it is, then now we combine together. Well, you know.
No, it's me thinking out loud.
And you may be right, you know, the thing's gone up and down, seesawed all over. Now we got commitments because we're proposing that we're gonna take early college high school off of there at some point. It could be this year, it could be next year, but that's now our move to, with direction and administration. And we need to know what the cost is gonna be for that, to make it
To make it a real high school.
a real high school.
Achieve Early College, how far into the future is that gonna be a continued program?
We're committed to it.
Well, I mean, but is there, at some point, does the whole model change away from an Achieve?
You're saying because we're not on campus?
No, I'm just saying,
Because of the different programs that we have.
because the educational model might change, are we still gonna educate those kids in that manner? Or does that particular aspect of it change, and then what do we do with Lincoln?
From our standpoint, I know there's different schools of thought on early college, high school, where some is a school within a school, such as PSJ, their entire school is an early college. We believe, much like the diploma program is a standalone program and not schools within schools, we believe in the power of having a standalone Achieve Early College. So that's a philosophy at this point that the administration believes in.
Same concept, you don't dilute it.
Right, right, so
As
that,
long as we go 20, 30, 40 years into the future with
yes,
it.
sir. And we continue offering the dual enrollment at the high school comprehensive, the AP at the high school comprehensive, all those things, but we want to create that environment where a high-performing child can go into a college environment and thrive.
I mean, if we have consensus that those are our two moves at this point, not moves actual, but moves
Right.
that,
Scenarios we like to see play, yeah.
exactly, that we have, the majority of, and not all of us, say that makes some viable sense that we ought to really look at. Then we're already 2 steps in, and we can see what we want to look at next.
And one of the moves you said was putting IB at the one, making it a 6 through
The
12?
thought
Like that
process
idea.
is that De Leon's already,
Making it a 6
make
through
it, yeah, the MYP, DYP program.
Now, let me ask you this, when we have enough room,
Just with parents, how would parents feel with having 6th graders with 12th graders on the same campus?
well, I think that the parents that
Idea,
have bought
that's
into
all
the
at
idea of
first.
the IB would love it.
Because you have an instant mentorship, you have peer tutoring.
And that's an excellent point. We'd have to create a system where there's no commingling between the younger kids and the older, so we'd separate the building and not have crossing periods pass or lunch periods cross, and things of that sort. But I think that would be a definite issue.
that's why they don't come back to high school.
But the capacity at De Leon is 832. There's already how many at IB? 400? Or how many students?
It's more than that.
So how many do we have?
I'll chime in real quick.
If
500. How many do we have at De Leon right now? About 600, right?
De Leon is about 5,
Yeah, but options we can
500.
put, I think.
but options
De Leon's
options right now,
522.
if IB is moved, options has to go with
Has to go
IB.
with it.
Yes.
Right,
So the numbers for options
Because
have to
they
be,
work together.
yeah.
because it's,
Not only that, we need that code.
That need,
That's-
Yeah.
that
Gotta
school
have the
code.
Question, but why
They
can't you
won't fit at
put,
De Leon.
hold
Options
on,
with
just,
early college, high school.
yeah, why can't you put options with early college?
It's 2 different beasts.
But because IB,
So is IB.
because you need to have IB with a code
Yes.
for,
Yeah, it's 2 different schools.
But my question is,
She was 2 different schools.
would we be able to tie the diploma year program to the Leon
To
school?
De
number?
Leon.
We would have to combine the program. And
But just like we're
go through it
leveraging
out, yeah.
options school number, could we leverage the Leon school number? Because that would solve it.
Most likely we can, we'd have to call
Okay.
IBO and do that.
But then whose GPA do they go into?
Back to their,
Back to the original.
the way it is.
Well, but if De Leon
It's
is,
different, yeah, it's a different entity now.
if De Leon is in a different entity, now they have their own, and to be top 10%, we just messed everybody up.
We
No,
would
they go
really,
back to
I
the-
think that's something that we have to really look at.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at the UIL implications, and then you're looking at, right now we sit at 007, which is essentially a school of choice, so it's kind of like a magnet school, and so kids can come to that program, and then we have them go back out. if we were to put them let's say that we were to combine IB and put them with Achieve, well, now you're putting them into a program that is a school, a full-blown school. So now you're disenrolling kids and putting them into Achieve, and now they're in that mix.
But hold on, but that's never an option to put Achieve with IB.
I know, but I'm just giving an example.
What
That's
about
a whole-
the diploma year with De Leon?
And if we take the diploma and the middle years program and put them with De Leon, that now I think is, I think we have to call TEA and ask, is that a different type of school structure with a new school code, or do we have two school codes?
Because you're tying it to a middle school as
Yeah.
opposed to a high school.
Yeah, because their home campus, it wouldn't be Row anymore, it would be De Leon,
But-
you know?
So, Ms. Nitch,
There's
I
not
have
enough room.
hold on, Ms. Nitch, I have a question, Karen.
Not without adding stuff.
Can
Yeah,
options
address the high
function
school need.
with early college?
Those are two different schools.
But they're two different schools now as well, IB and options, right?
So now you have two schools
Under one,
on
yeah.
one site.
Currently now, do we have options and IB?
Yes.
Options is a school.
It's a school.
But IB is not a
And
school,
IB is a program.
right?
Leveraging the
Yeah,
options.
IB
IB does not have a code for
Yeah,
school.
you can't-
They're using the option
The high
number.
school.
Options is the
Which is what the
school,
high school
IB
can.
just has.
That's how they get
principals
away
want.
with,
Yeah.
That's the only way to make it work. That's how
Remember,
it's
but what's the population at De Leon right now, today?
522.
So we add another 500 students, what's IB again?
Well,
530.
Lamar campus is almost 600 right now.
So
That's-
that's
but without
1,100
Achieve,
for
how
a
many-
school at 832.
we're not gonna need
Oh, we
Achieve.
don't have numbers on.
We're not gonna need,
No, De Leon's right now capacity is 832.
right?
How many students are there right now?
522.
522. You add 600, we're at 1,100 for a
Yeah, bro, but you're gonna take out the
Think
option
about
kids.
what the implications are.
We might not be able to.
Yeah.
But even if you don't,
Because you wanna use the
even
code.
if you add
He's saying-
400 from IB, Marco, you add 400, you're still
Still
over
over, yeah.
capacity.
Oh, it hurts you.
And that's kind of what we're
You don't gain
doing.
anything.
But, the but that I would add is that you all said you didn't want to put a high school back into a middle school and repeat some errors that you've made. For the price of what we were showing up there
Let's
of
keep options
the
together.
renovation, you could spend some of that money and really renovate De Leon to address both the high school and the middle school IB programs in that one building, making an addition, and it might end up being 1,000 student capacity,
I got you.
right? Fixing real science labs to address the issue that you were raising, that we want to make, we don't want to make our same mistake that we did of putting a high school into a middle school again. So let's fix it so that we have some separation of middle school and high school kids.
So the
It
other.
seems like it might at least be worth exploring
well,
what
and
the
the other-
implications are.
And I agree, we explore it. I think the other thing we explore too is asking SDC if they would go with us in building a new standalone building at Lincoln to house IB. You know,
You mean
ran,
early
To house
college.
Right.
early college.
early call, well, no, I say move IB and options there into that freestanding building, because she has said what they need at night is access to classrooms. Like during the day we use it, and at night they would come in and use it for,
And that's what she was interested in.
that's what that was 2 years ago when she cornered me on that.
Options and IB. At Lincoln.
Now, let me pose this question. If the MYP is still 9th and 10th grade, why can't we move the freshmen and sophomores to De Leon?
And out of, oh,
Courses
no.
and teachers.
Because they're writing their theory, they start writing it in like the 9th grade, all the way to the end of the, I mean,
And some are double prepping,
Yeah.
NYP and diploma year.
They may call it NYP, but
But
they're
it's-
really
it's the
functioning
DYP.
as part of the diploma, because that's where they get the momentum moving 9th and 10th into the
yeah, they're already
next
doing all
year.
the volunteer work and all their everything.
I would hate to do. Well, the second option is a scenario of if we cannot make it work with all IB at De Leon with the modifications, we need to know that, maybe $10 million, $12 million, then figure options and IB going into Lincoln. What would that look like?
A standalone facility.
Well, it'd be converting the campus right now.
And move the Lincoln students to De Leon.
I'd say,
Yeah.
I like that, you move into De Leon, you have 6 schools, middle schools, 2 per high school. We can have Achieve and talk to STC, would they go half and half on building a new facility there? I mean, it's our land, saves them little bit of money.
So you're saying have a facility on the south end for early college, high school, and redo Lincoln to house options and IB?
Or
That's what you're
vice
saying.
versa, either way.
Yes.
Yes?
With
Yes,
brand new
yes,
science
yes, yes,
labs,
yes,
everything
yes,
else.
yes, yes.
So you
I
have
like,
the
yes.
access to STC.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Options.
Yeah, you're right. It'd make more sense to build a new facility for early achievement,
Uh-huh.
right? And then you convert Lincoln to,
A high-tech science lab,
Absolutely.
yeah.
just for them.
What that might look like.
I don't know.
I know, but that's what I'm suggesting to
We can
staff.
chalk up all those scenarios.
I like that scenario. Yeah, because then their home campus is still
And-
Mackay or whatever.
And
it's
here's the thing about
academy.
Lincoln, I know you're displacing kids that are there, but De Leon's a step up as far as
Oh,
facilities.
facilities
And I've been to the weight room, you know, we all have been to Lincoln. They need an upgrade. They're behind on a lot
How
of
many kids are
facilities.
in Lincoln right now?
400 and
400
change.
and-
Yeah.
I can tell you.
So they would just barely put them over, they don't know.
Just barely over.
Oh,
Good
I'm
idea.
looking at 600.
Good conversation.
No, but remember, right now, we're just talking about one or two or three possible moves.
Right.
We have to look at zoning at some point. It is what you just said, you're right. But what if the line is drawn differently, where not all of them are going straight into De Leon? Some of them may go to a different campus, and I don't know what that looks
I
like.
think what your plan is good, but I don't think we can just take one or two steps without proposing
More.
the next
Right.
10 steps.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I was wrong, De Leon.
I was just getting us started,
61.
Danny. You're right. I'm just getting, you know, it's like a journey of 100 miles. You start with
Lincoln's
one.
522,
So that the dominoes
De
fall
Leon's
in
Exactly.
the right place.
But to your point, I mean, like moving the Head Starts to elementary schools, I like that. I mean,
Right.
selling Austin School, I like that, or whatever. I mean,
Well, before we go too far, let's talk about the one you're interested in. Is there anybody here that doesn't see us moving in? What's your recommendation? Are you planning to move the preschools
De Leon's at 687.
already to the,
Yes, sir, we
And
did the
Lincoln's at
strongest
524.
recommendation on behalf of the administration.
And
We're
2018,
very interested in
January 2018.
low-hanging
Those are the
fruit
newest
on the
numbers.
Austin to the Head Starts to low-enrolled elementary schools. Also, the property on South 17th, where special ed is currently housed, and we have space for special ed in buildings so that we could sell that property. And then also the 23rd Old Big Pen. We're very interested in getting that off our books.
That's our
So
first step.
that to begin with, and it doesn't impact children. So we move. That's something that we strongly recommend, and we agree with wholeheartedly with the recommendation from MGT. All the others we can sketch up and have plans for, as you all have mentioned, and then go 10 years out. We can,
I mean, I think the other
reverse
thing is
engineer
too, from my opinion, Doc, we're discussing is, if you combine some south side schools to free up so you can move some people over there, I'd be
Yeah,
open
she's
for that as well
recommended
too.
Yeah, she's
did a lot of
recommended
that.
that. And I know that Dr. B and Ruben went to Austin and
Right.
saw the things that are happening in Austin ISD, and there's a lot of consolidation of schools and also working.
I know
with
it's a
the
bad
city of
word, but
Austin.
it frees up facilities.
well,
And it frees up resources. It
Yes.
frees up resources, because you're never going to have enough money in your bucket.
And I know we're having a public meeting, but even if we were saying that, no one, I mean, I would fight strongly, and of course, I can't speak for everyone myself. I would like to see us not lose staff because of any consolidations through natural, you know, I think that's what we're all saying, right? I mean, I don't want anybody hearing saying, oh, these guys are talking consolidation, how does it affect my job? That's,
You're not having less kids, so you should.
Right, the teachers would move with the kids.
that's a good point. Mary.
Exactly.
Thank you.
You lose some administrators though, and some counselors,
But-
but we have to
and-
lose.
We could
But through
absorb that.
but through
Well, we also
attrition and
though have to
absorption.
go down at least 60
Custodian.
people.
But that's through normal attrition, right, I'm sure.
Right.
all right, I guess to back up, so we have actionable. You know, the recommendations are, you're gonna come to the board with a recommendation for the preschool.
Yes, sir. Head
Okay.
Start.
Okay, and that's starting for next year, 17, 18.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's, unless somebody feels differently.
Marco, did you hear that?
That
Mr.
would just
Villa?
go on the campus.
You okay with
Well,
that?
it may be two. We're gonna look at the lowest
Yes, we're
enrolled elementary
And-
schools, but it goes back to Susan's point on, we wanna create a continuum where you go to pre-K and then you go K1, 2, and you stay in
You
it.
stay in
Could
that
be
school.
Novato, could be Dick
Are those kids bused to the campus?
Right now, the parents are dropping them off at the Head Start, and then they have bands and things of that sort.
Well, that's a very good point. We may have to look at it, maybe a drop-off and then bus them to there.
Okay, but if you're writing a check, $400 or $500, and I had to drive a little, I'll take driving.
See, because a lot of these parents are gonna come into this program is that they're gonna be paying less to come to school and
That's what I'm
learn
saying.
versus daycare, because that's where they are right now.
Yeah, right.
These are
That's what I'm
three-year-olds.
saying.
Pay for Head Start?
These are 4
No.
years.
No,
we don't
but
pay
he's
for it.
talking about
Three and
expanding it
Yeah,
to three-year-olds.
we can charge
preschool.
for 3 years.
Yeah.
That's what your recommendation is.
Okay.
What I'm saying as a parent, I don't mind traveling if it saves me money.
And I'd rather be with a certified teacher with nurses and counselors on
Absolutely.
campus. I'd rather be than going to where I
With
used to go
security
to
doors
daycare.
and cameras and
Yeah,
everything
because, I
else.
mean, my generation, you found a daycare in the neighborhood, and that's, you know,
And you'll assign a price tag to these as well, because,
Yes.
I was just-
and even the steps we're taking, those have to have price tags.
Yes,
The first ones have to be cheap or free,
yes,
so that the rest of them, you can spend more money once you start making sense with your initial steps.
exactly.
And I was just saying, because like those kids that are
that
at
we
Head
still
Start,
address.
some of those
Oh, it
live in
collapsed.
that area, right? So those are not gonna go all the way to Bottom or one of those schools where they live, because that's not.
No,
gonna
we
be
want to
the
keep them as close to that building as possible. That's what we're looking at
Bottom
Novato.
has room, right?
A lot of them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, their entire
We're killing
building is,
it.
their entire school's in the new portion of the
Yeah.
building, so we have all that exterior.
The point being
Makes
is,
some
we
sense.
now recognize they cannot be isolated. They gotta be brought into the schools.
Right.
And the low population schools, that they can start building it back.
The sooner they assimilate, the better.
Yes.
Exactly.
And we would like to sell or rent that property or work with the city or do something.
So that's the second one.
Dr. Moreno.
Yes, sir. Something that we learned in Austin in our visit, and it's mentioned here as a repurpose. Austin felt real good about what they had done, and they repurposed those buildings with the city, and they partnered, and they offered social services. There was all kinds, there was a library in there. There were meeting rooms for the neighborhoods to come in afterwards, and that they lease space in effect to the county, to the city. And that's a very viable option. I mean, it seemed to work very well, and it really kept that community intact.
That's exactly what the city of McAllen did with the old Sam Houston building.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they did. So now Austin's not that far from the old Sam Houston.
It's right there, it's 2
So
blocks.
they may want to re-energize that. They had incubators in there, there are a lot of young people, that artists, and a lot of stuff that you now see in mainstream business that we're starting with videography and the like, started in that incubator.
And all of that is now in the old library off of Main Street.
Yeah,
Which is called the incubator.
which is called the incubator. But it all originated at the old Sam Houston.
Yep.
So you're going back to, you were gonna say, we're all in agreement about Austin School selling?
Yes.
Selling, renting.
Or renting.
Repurpose.
Selling.
So pretty much all the phase one recommendations, we're all good with.
With those,
That's what's.
They're up there.
I just think we need to take them one by one so nobody feels
Right.
rushed.
Okay.
And these are simply recommendations. There's no action that'll take
I,
place.
I.
Well, they're recommendations with actions being directed to him.
They have to be developed by administration and brought to us.
Correct.
But at
So
least
that-
we know that's a direction that the board.
It isn't actionable, but in a sense, he's getting direction from us at a workshop.
And what I said earlier, this is what I guess I thought this is low-hanging fruit. I thought the other steps, it might take a little bit more because we gotta look into some other things, and then we can go in more discussions, but this is,
Well, this is what I'm trying to do. You go to the two extremes and you work away towards the center. So we gave direction to do some preliminary on the really high stuff, because it is a high stuff. But now we're doing this real low-hanging fruit. And then now, as Danny said, we gotta start working on some other ones from the low-hanging fruit towards the high stuff.
yeah.
So that's now where we are. So the first thing is, we take one of these one by one that we agree, and that's done.
And I'd like to see how we put a time frame on step one and the last step. Let's see what kind of projected time period we're talking about.
And one of these too, I mean, like the new elementary school on the north side, maybe we can approach someone, like a well-known figure and ask for donation, name the school after him. Because the Danny Bell Elementary School would sound really good.
I think it sounds beautiful.
Well, we can change that.
No, it doesn't.
Possum's alive.
Possum's alive. He's kicking.
It's flying around.
Hey. We'll work it out. He's got the right drugs for
It
it.
can
got
be
my
your
vote.
colors, whatever you want in the school, Danny.
But one of the things that I was talking to Jay about that with the school is that there's nothing to say with our rating that we borrow the money. We got a very low rating, we could possibly borrow the money to build the elementary. We just need to decide, again, giving direction administration to look, are we looking at existing land to buy, which is gonna cost more, it ain't gonna be that price. Or do we have a trade-off with the city for land, which now the building is a little bit closer to that 21, 22. Like the land next to Gonzalez,
Where that
Well, we
park is.
own property on Fern and McCall, so we have that location already
Which is
set.
PSJ,
No, it's
No,
McAllen.
no, it's not, it's McAllen ISD.
Which one?
They're behind the monitor.
Kind of behind the monitor, not really, but
So that's Jackson in front.
it's McCall.
It's McCall.
McCall, it's actually McCall and Gardenia,
Yeah.
but there's no Gardenia there unless you come around the back way. And it's a long, narrow strip,
Yes, dude, we
and you could come in safely off of,
Monitor
It is not far from
Monitor's McAllen.
Gonzalez,
Yeah.
it's not far at all.
The
No,
monitor's
no,
in
It's
McAllen.
not far city limits, it's
No,
McAllen.
It's that
it's
road.
McAllen.
The frontage is, the
The
frontage part is.
other side of the street is far, the
Yeah.
side of the street is McAllen.
and it's McAllen School
But
District.
my,
It was bought, that land was bought intentionally for the ability to grow another elementary.
In fact, it's called elementary school number
So
6.
none of our land that we own belongs.
Elementary school number 6,
PSJ
that's the
ISD.
name of it.
No, this is us.
Mike? Yes, sir. My question is, any of the piece of land that we own there, is any of it part of PSJ ISD?
Part of, as you look at this, part of the K Street, it was on that far side.
Thank you.
But it was negotiated, well, he can tell you the story, it was negotiated, it's not, it's now, it's 100% McAllen ISD School District, through a negotiation done years ago when they wanted some of our land. So we gave them a little switcheroo, and that's 100%
It's
McAllen
100% McAllen ISD.
We traded back in.
yes,
Right back in
Some
there,
land back in here
At
that we traded
Orangewood.
off for that.
way,
Back in
way, way
Orangewood.
back when,
I remember that.
yeah.
Well, if we're gonna now, Tony, we were gonna wrap these up, or what did you wanna do?
Let the discussion continue as long as,
All right, then I suggest what Debbie just
Gotta go,
said, is that
hello.
that we look at building an elementary school and finding out if we can borrow money, and the interest rate's starting to move up. It would've been great if we'd done this a couple of years back when it was practically zero. But it's still better than doing anything yet, is to borrow the money instead. What would that cost, and how can we make those arrangements to pay that as we go on? If we decide to get another financial means down the road, we can bring that back into it through either a bond at a later time, or if a TRE is passed, that can help cover that cost.
Yeah, I think in light of all the safety and everything, that elementary school is, in my mind, the most unsafe because of all those portables. And I think that should be one of the things that we talk about and prioritize is safety, and which schools have the most portables. And elementary students in portables having to go inside to the bathroom all the time, that
not
is
a
a
good
safety
thing.
concern.
Not a
And
good
so if that means that immediately we either rezone and move this way, everybody move this way, or if we build an extra school, a 6th elementary school, that needs to be addressed though.
Yeah,
Hard to say no to safety.
Yeah,
I think we achieve all of it if we use that number 6,
Mm-hmm.
and we look at financing if possible. You're still gonna rezone in the sense, now you're gonna have to tell folks from these schools versus the Cascade, which is, I agree with you on that. And possibly even Jackson, could some of it go that way too,
Mm-hmm.
depending how it works for us.
And while you're discussing, I think the other option for me is, what is SCC willing to do? And I think we need to approach them and just say, hey, this is what are your thoughts? How can you use our link? And if you were, give us some ideas what you're thinking, and give us some serious numbers. So I think that also, if there's a way to utilize their money and borrow some of our money, I like to do that too, and build something over there.
Yeah, but I agree with you. The only concern I had in that conversation that I had with her as well, because I think we were there, she was more leaning towards the early college. And I don't know, I'm all right with that, but if we decide we think that's where IB ought to go, because it doesn't work out for De Leon, that won't be an option.
Well, but building a facility, I thought they still needed another building. She had discussed building where the tennis courts are, and the only thing is that they would have to use it at night. But to Debbie's point, I hadn't thought about it, if it's early achievable, there'll be nobody in that building. So, that's what I'm saying, if we can meet them halfway with something like that, that might be an option.
See, I misunderstood, because I had understood that we were talking about, because when we had talked to Ruben, there's gonna be about $4 to $6 million to renovate Lincoln to bring it up to a high school level. And then, and also somewhat college, in that STC would be using it at night and our kids would be using it during the day. But that was for early college. It
Well,
wasn't for-
either way, I think maybe Dr. Gonzalez may be talking to her and, you know, another board member or whoever, or,
Well, that's our option too anyway. It's not out of the
Right.
picture, because we can't get a full IB at De Leon from K to 12 for a number of reasons. Then we have to look at Lincoln for possibly IB.
and they're down this year, so they might not even have money. So that's what we needed to hear. I mean, I know they're scrambling, they lost enrollment,
Who?
STC.
STC.
They're down.
I still think the easiest solution is just go back and put them back on there. I think you feel the same way.
I do.
That really is the easy fix for everybody concerned.
Okay.
I will set up a meeting with Dr. Reed and have all these discussions on that end. And then also come back with projections on everything else we've discussed up to this point. Just for clarification though, on these other points that we talked about with regard to the Head Start and the ING Center, the Special Ed Department on South 17th, the old Big Pen,
There's a plan to move those into
we're
our campus
comfortable,
already.
we're comfortable with
Yeah.
those.
I am.
Mr. Trevino?
In the previous discussion that we had, we had talked about the possibility of possibly putting, if the decision is made to move the special ed department from there, is to get with legal and see what the possibility is of putting it up for sale while it's being occupied, and not empty out the
Displacing it.
building and sit on it for, you know, however long it takes to sell.
I might have a lead on that. Any idea what that was ever, you remember what that building was?
That's
Was it
really the first step,
600,000?
is get appraisals on everything.
Was it
now.
600?
Appraisals and everything.
The South 17th, we never appraised that.
No.
No, the old Big Pen was 700 the last time we looked at it.
Old Big Pen.
But we haven't looked at the old, that
ING.
I don't believe so.
We would need a full appraisal on the Austin, the special ed building, and the Thick Pen.
But just because of the
Reappraisal.
entertainment district, that South 17th's prime. Prime.
Yeah,
So we're all in agreement, we're gonna appraise those and
Yes.
we'll put them up for sale?
Danny's gonna put.
even if you just got a, without going into a full-blown appraisal, if you just, because you can't sell it, by law, you can't sell it under,
Yeah.
instead of spending full money on it.
Yeah, you can get online and look at what it's appraised at.
Well, but it's a municipality, so it wouldn't be appraised.
Yeah,
No,
it is.
we have, well, 8 years ago, we did appraisals on it, so we do a refresh for half the amount.
The South 17th property?
Yes.
But I don't think there should be any cost involved though in getting,
Online?
like, not a real, not calling an appraiser out and an engineer out there measuring and doing all that, but just a appraisal for tax purposes. I mean, I think it's better just get online and looking. I don't think it's I mean, I might be wrong,
Just get a ballpark.
Yeah, we'll get
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
All right. Any further discussion?
Well,
On that.
Milo,
So are we gonna go here now on the collapsing? Oh, no, that's not collapsing.
Actually, we're at the end of the MGT report, and we wanted to kind of go in, well, we wanted to move into what we've done as far as with facilities, maintenance, operations, and some of the projections that we have there. And then that'll give us a pretty good picture then of the overall master plan. So I just want to turn it over to Ruben here and let him talk a little bit.
Before you do that, I just want to remind you that one of the things that we told you we would do is give you the database. You now own the database, you now own the software. It's not a whiz-bang software, as Ruben's folks discovered. It's a little bit clunky, but you still own it, you have it, we don't charge you anything else for it. So he has been able to go in and update all of the buildings that he's put new roofs on, new chillers into, new paving, and so you'll see some new scores. So the scores that I gave are the ones we did in 2015-16. What Ruben has been able to do is to update all of that information, and we'll be able to continue to do that as you have further maintenance work done on each of your buildings. And I really commend you for both taking that on, as well as Ruben's folks for upgrading the information and being able to feed back to you. This is where we were in 2015, this is where we are now in 17-18.
Does your software take into account time progression and include the depreciation going forward?
Some life cycles, no, that's part of what I said about it being kind of clunky. It's a higher level assessment than some systems are. We do know that the roof is this old and should be phased out at this point, but we certainly are not looking at each of the chillers or each of the systems like that.
That's not an automatic update?
It's not an
a
automatic
manual
update. It's a manual update. So they're doing that every December, I think is the plan right now, based on the work that they do, right? It's not automatic.
Okay.
Doesn't roll over.
I'm sorry, before we go into there, just so we're all clear, the reason that we would be moving people out of the Lamar campus is because we would be putting all this up for sale, right? Getting rid of our portables, selling our portables off, moving administration. I mean, that's the whole rationale. Otherwise, why are we moving people out of Lamar? Right?
Well, the other is the safety aspect of it, because it needs some major safety upgrades there. And the second, it was never designed, it's an elementary school, it was never designed for high school academics to prepare them. I mean, it wasn't. So, you know, if you either put more money into it,
Well, you're gonna have to put money into it.
but it's a lot cheaper to put money into it for an administration
right.
building than it would be.
My dad went to high school there.
So the
Oh, it was a high school at one point?
It was a high school. My dad went to high school there.
High school
right,
and
Mr.
junior
Scott?
high.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what will we
Yeah.
be getting rid of? This
What was it
this
called?
building,
Lamar High
that student services? I mean, what's the thought? We would be getting rid of all these
After-
portables, we'd be getting rid of
after
this,
downtown or before
getting rid of this, and seeing if we could do that city park with that Central Park type idea? Okay.
Now, remember, none of this is gonna happen today or tomorrow.
No, just the
You start to
ideas.
putting, exactly,
Just
exactly.
ideas.
Yeah.
If we could, then what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we could all come to a stop and they stay there another 5
Yeah,
years
and
and nothing
happens.
happens. It was awesome.
This-
All right, Ruben.
This is the next slide that pertains to the basis software that Ms. Zoller was just describing.
Where's that thing?
Our staff was trained back in the month of November and December, and we've updated everything that is complete, not any item that is currently in progress or being, slated to be completed this summer. So the numbers you see on the right were the original from the original snapshot, and the numbers on the left is the upgraded projects with a new scoring.
So when I see Hendricks Elementary at a light blue, that was the original score. But
Yes,
now with the dark blue is the new score after the work has
after
been
the
done.
work, yes.
Right.
And that was their goal. So, wow.
Tony, you can see that.
And you can see a difference that there's 5,
No, but why are those numbers different from here, from page 3? Because here it has out of it, it's at a 67.45.
that is the total score. This is only for the building condition part of it.
This is the 40, this is part of the 40.
That has to do with the facility and the building only. This is a 40, the 40% of the total score of the basis system. Part of the, if you want to zoom back down. Some of the items that made differences on some of these scores that have been completed include the Row, De Leon, and Garza roof projects. The upcoming roofing projects that will make a difference are Gonzalez, Rayburn, Lincoln, and Navarro. Some of the completed front entrance projects, along with the upcoming front entrance projects for Rayburn, Garza, and these are modifications that will be done, along with the 4 high school campuses. And then you'll see the 2018 to 2020 to 2023 projects for roofs. We're working on the replacement schedule currently for the roofing projects and addressing the age and how, the systems and the manufacturing companies that have warranties on them. And you'll see Roosevelt, Jackson, Cathy, and Crockett that will follow on down. And we're also compiling the information district-wide on the air handlers inside the buildings, as we've already done some of the chiller replacements, which are exterior. We're looking at the Row being completed this summer for the upstairs section, and then Brown is next on the replacement for the air handlers.
And Matt Kai got into the blue.
Mr. Trevino, Ruben,
Yes, sir.
your scores went up because of upgrades.
Right.
When will age take it down below the original score? You know?
It depends on whether he can maintain his preventive maintenance and his 5-year update cycle, right? Because if the plumbing is hitting its 20-year mark and he goes in and does a plumbing upgrade, then the age didn't do that, right? Puts a new roof on before it hits its 20-year, 25-year mark, then it wouldn't bring it down. But that is the natural aging process of a building, you're so
And
right.
all systems are categorized and in the scoring system already, right?
Yes.
And you already have them on a
16
schedule
different
already,
systems.
everything that would affect this.
You'll see on the next slides.
You ready?
Yes. The next slide addresses the site condition of the campuses. The site condition is affected by the exterior parking lots, the sidewalks, the lighting, playground areas, playground structures. The completed paving projects that we've completed up to now are Milam, Morris, and Bulldog Drive. Upcoming that are on schedule for this coming summer are Bonham, Brown, Escandon, and Jackson. The completed fencing projects that have been completed already have been Rowe, Memorial, McHigh, and Sanchez in the front areas and the perimeter of Sanchez Elementary. Upcoming are Escandon, Brown, Fields, Thigpen, and Zavala. The upcoming projects for the 5 years from 2018 to 2023 that we're looking at are Alvarez, McAuliffe, Lincoln, and McHigh. And those particular projects are in line with the site scores that you see on the right-hand side. And then the fencing that we're currently starting to assess and address is district-wide security fencing for all 33 campuses to wherever it's needed at this time. We believe that those projects will also bring the scores somewhat up. It's difficult to bring those scores because the scores have a lot of different components to them. So you might think that if you go in there and redo a whole parking area or redo, the whole exterior of it or the fencing, that it might bring it up, but it contains a lot of different components to bring up a score.
Looking at this as site condition, curb appeal,
There's
Curb appeal
landscaping, but not as much as you might think, because some of that is operational, right? And the day we were there, would we grade it down because it wasn't mowed, or the trees hadn't been trimmed? And 2 days later, they come in and trim the trees and mow the grass. Well, then the score doesn't mean anything. So it's permanent kinds of things, not operational kinds of decisions.
I'm noticing Alvarez and Brown in particular, those are very close to the frontage that, you don't have much space there. So that would go into the paving of those.
That has to do with the parking, the accessibility to and from the front entrance of the school, the teacher parking lots.
Condition of the lighting.
One big difference that you'll see there is Morris Middle School. We added additional parking. The whole parking was completely redone, and that brought up the score over at Morris.
And Brown's gonna change once we finish.
Brown will change on that scale as well, because Brown is scheduled already for this summer. And so will Escandon, which is another one that was on there during the snapshot, and it's already on the schedule for this summer as well. So there's different components when it comes to the site conditions.
That's 1%, right? I mean, that's, when you mentioned there's 4 numbers at the top of that one slide. It
Yes,
said 90,
this is
99.
this is one
This is one of those.
one
Right.
of those. Yes,
This is 10%.
yes.
10%.
The next slide is I know I've been talking about this, and I just presented on this on Monday's board meeting. But this here shows the 3-year completed and in progress, and the 5-year replacement plan for the district-wide chillers. So if you see, the light green is items that have been completed that affected the scores. In the dark green, they did not affect the scores because they're not completed yet, but they're on schedule to be completed by June of this summer, okay, of this year. So, and then on the top right, you'll see we went ahead and sliced down 7 chiller projects per year, because if you see year 2022, that year we would probably have to replace 12 or 13 at one point. So to make it more manageable, if we do, and if we stick to that replacement plan over the next 5-year period, we will jump ahead up to 2025 and have that 3 or 4 year break at that point. Now from there may be 1 or 2 machines that might need replacement all of a sudden and will be placed at the top of the list. So, and then we'll readjust
current.
accordingly as we go.
A question, and I'm not sure
Impressive.
who to direct it to, but is there a possibility that we could artificially maintain a high score on a building by scheduled maintenance and upgrades on certain issues, but be really lacking in another issue? That,
So it's not a true score.
so it's not a true score. In other words, can we keep it artificially high and neglect a
Well,
particular category?
I think they update it once the work is done.
Right.
No, but what, let's say the chiller, I'm only picking a chiller, but what if you never touch the chiller, would you keep your score artificially
Well,
high with everything else?
The only way you keep a score is based on, each component has a point value based on the percentage of that item's cost relative to the building as a whole. So the roof has a point value, the exterior windows have a point value, the floor and the doors and the plumbing and each of those components has a score that's in there. And you can't go in and change that score, that possible score value. So if you replace the roof, it's going to change the roof score, but it's not going to make your plumbing better, right? So it's still going to tally up whatever it's going to tally up to total 100. So I don't think so. I mean, you got to keep an eye on
No,
Mr.
and we're-
Trevino
and
to make
we're
sure he isn't
keeping-
gaming the system
Well, like I
here,
said, your
but,
grade point average,
yeah.
your grade point average, you can make all A's
Weighted.
and 1 F. You know, it's gonna bring.
How's it weighted?
I just wanna be sure
Yes.
that,
Yeah, so the systems are weighted based on their
and every
their
aspect has a
proportion to the,
contribution to.
right.
Yes, and
Right.
we have the original snapshot that was taken at that time, and that is why those numbers will always be available. And we'll always compare them to the original snapshot so that we can either see progress or how much progress is being made, or is there no progress being made. So those scores are locked in and those will never be moved. So that's why I wanted to compare one to
Your
one,
baseline.
because anybody can go in there and, like you say.
And the other point that Mr. Suarez made about, so why doesn't Ruben's score match the combined score that I showed you? At the moment, all that he has updated are those 2 condition scores, the building condition score and the site condition score. But the district could choose, you have all the data, you could choose, once you get these science rooms updated, you can go into the educational suitability column and go to find the science and look at the science score and update the science score. If you add on to the library, you can go in and change the library score. So you'll be able to change any of those in there because you own the technology. Absolutely, you can do up to the whole,
To Trustee
the whole
Boda's
thing.
point, I do think that we have to hold ourselves accountable and taking a balanced approach where we don't only focus on building condition or educational suitability, but we also drive the technology and the building site. Where we're not just driving the 40 and the 40 and ignoring the 10 and the 10 to get an artificial score up.
Right.
So we have to hold ourselves accountable and have
Yes.
internal controls to say, we're gonna take a balanced approach to
Yes.
targeting all of these.
And that's why these are individual scores,
Right.
and they have to do with the site and the building condition. The other 2 components, once
Just so you
those are
don't, just so you don't neglect the sidewalk,
Yes,
or the front door, or the overhang, or
Yes.
whatever.
yes.
Okay. So everything has to be
But all
moved.
that data is in there and stays in there. You can't bump this one up and ignore this other one down here at the bottom.
The next slide shows the 5-year replacement plan and the fire alarms that have been completed. And the light green is the completed, the dark green will be completed this year. Those did not affect the score because they're not completed projects. And over at the top right-hand corner, you'll see 1 fire alarm per year to be able to maintain the years on the life cycle. And for the next 4 years, if we were to do one per year, that would put us 4 to 5 years ahead. We could also choose and say, you know what, we're not gonna do one until 2020, which is a replacement date for Kathy, or start and get one done already next year so that we, move ahead on the line.
I have a kind of a random question on fire alarms. I was inside Bonham today when we had a fire drill, and it wasn't very loud compared to the ones I've been inside Bettis, and it's a fire drill. Are there different tones?
The bottom fire alarm is a new fire alarm that was replaced this past year, and it is a voice evac system. And there are different, how would I put it, different settings that the fire marshal comes in, and we have to be within those settings to be able to pass inspection through the fire marshal.
Decibel settings?
Decibels,
Yeah,
yes.
because the parents I was with, they were upset that it wasn't loud enough. They were very concerned that it wasn't loud enough. So
Make it louder.
yeah, I was like, well, it's brand new, it must be top of the line,
Sometimes, and that's been
We had
one,
our sewing machines going so fast.
that's been one difference with the voice evac system, that you're listening to what it's telling you.
Yeah.
Please evacuate, please evacuate, please evacuate
Yeah.
the building.
I will say, it's off task, but that school, every teacher they grabbed, apparently the Red Cross gave them all a backpack, a red backpack, and in it,
First aid kit.
it has a first aid kit, it has a flashlight, it has their roster, and it has cards, and a green, yellow, red card. And when they walk outside, they hold it, and I was like, what's there, all the teachers holding it? And that means, one card means the class is complete, the other card means I'm missing kids, and another color means I have somebody's extra kids. It's like, oh my God, why don't we have that in every school? It's just, and they had, what I did suggest is, I know we're totally off topic, but I suggested too that if there's medications that a student needs, they should have a nurse thing in there with saying like, because if it's 2 hours and I'm outside for 2 hours, I should know Johnny needs something at 10 o'clock and I need to let them know. And I just thought if it had emergency phone numbers besides the class roster, I thought that was a great idea. Anyway, sorry, off topic.
Good.
You work on that.
Our next slide is, I guess, any questions?
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah, hard
I was
hearing.
looking at one site, one of the school districts, I'll have to find it, and I'll send it to y'all. But they had their facility, all those things that we've been talking about, they had it up front. And so you were able to see progress being done by campus. They had the schools listed, and you clicked on it, and it showed you all of the maintenance, all of the activities that are going on, taxpayer dollars, it tied it all together.
We can do that.
Does it work?
On the website, yes. I can tell you that we're one of the, if not the only school district, one of a handful that's actually got our transparency of our finances on our website. And as a result, others, any taxpayer anywhere can look at what our finances are. You can't do that with most school districts. So I think if we put what we've done or are doing, I think it would be most helpful.
The other thing people do is put up a big sign as they're starting.
So it's not really a question, it's a
Put
suggestion.
up a big billboard as they start construction.
More like, can we do it?
Tax dollars at work.
Yes, sir.
Good point.
Science labs.
Yeah, that brings us to the next, this is the second item of our workshop today, and that, this is the recommendations for the science lab. And I got Dr. Novato here to talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you. I'll be discussing recommendations for upgrades to our high school science labs. I've been working very closely with Jeanette, our secondary science coordinator, and Karen Nature, director of advanced academics. And we have been evaluating the needs of our science labs at the high schools, and today we bring forth some recommendations.
Ms. Nino, can I have you come up right in between Sam and,
Yes. And I would
just in
like,
case you have a question?
That means you get a snack.
You already did.
Oh, you got one already? All right.
Thank
There we
you.
go. Welcome. Welcome to the club.
and I would like to add the recommendations that we're making tonight do tie with Goal 1, student achievement, student focus of our strategic plan, as well as Goal 2, people development, and Goal 4, financial priorities. I'll go ahead and get started. The first thing that I'd like to discuss, of course, is the addition of a dual enrollment biology. As you know, a couple of years ago, STC did advise us that we could not offer dual enrollment unless we upgraded our labs with equipment and basically mainly with instructional materials and a little bit of equipment. And so so at that point, we did not continue. However, our goal has been to bring it back. We did reach out to STC once again, to Mr. Carlos Gonzalez, and Dr. Cervantes, who's the dean of the biology department, and we asked him to come back and give us an updated list, an inventory of what we were needing in order to be up to par with STC standards. And so they did, and so here before you, you have the the amounts actually, the amount that it would take, the expenditures that it would take in order to equip the labs to meet the STC standards. And so at McAllen High School, it will require $75,781, Memorial High School $69,591, and Rural High School $67,931, for a total of $213,303.
That's just equipment and material.
Yes, sir, instructional material and a little bit of equipment.
Are we saying that we'll be utilizing one lab for all the
One lab per high school.
Okay.
One lab per high school, which would be, if we were to use it, it would be up to 3 sections.
No
Because each
construction at all, right?
No construction is required.
No, I'm just asking.
Right.
Okay, good.
Well, we talked about doubling the size of those, so there will be
Yeah.
some equipment, but that'll be in-house.
Okay, go ahead.
But this is just for dual enrollment
Got it.
classes.
This
that's
is
it.
just for doing.
Because they're different science projects that we're
Yes, that's
talking about.
correct.
How many
That's correct.
students are enrolled in or dual, or potentially? I know we don't have it right
In
now.
this particular class,
Just my son.
Nobody now.
well,
I know.
we're looking about 25 students per class.
Okay,
So if we were to offer 3 sections, it would be 75
75
students
per
per campus.
Per campus.
I think also something important to share here is that with science, there's always a lab component attached to any college course. Even in our, in our regular curriculum, we embed that 40% lab time into our courses in high school and middle school. But here we would be looking at a block. So, the teacher would teach over 2 class periods, this dual enrollment course. So those students that would enroll into this course would need to know they're taking it as a block. And it would take 2 class periods. So, just in their planning, as they're going in to enroll this, they would possibly be looking to make a decision on somewhere else in their schedule, because they do need to have the lecture portion, the lab portion, in order to complete Biology 1406, which is a 1-semester course for 1 credit, and then assuming successful completion of that credit, then they can move on to Biology 1407, which is a whole separate course for 2nd semester. So it's really 2 courses over 1 year.
So it's essentially, if you were on campus at STC, as an entering freshman, you would take 1406, first
Yes.
semester, 2nd semester, you take 1407.
Yes, these are the biology courses they offer for the science majors.
Very good.
That's what it was.
Okay.
Good question, Clay.
Based on surprise.
In addition, we are proposing that we upgrade the furniture and some of the equipment in each of our labs. We did an evaluation of all our labs, and our furniture and equipment has not been replaced in a number of years, and so they're up for replacement. And so that is one of the recommendations that we're making for all of our labs. And so before you have 4 different figures. The first figure is to replace just the student and teacher furniture. And so for biology and biology-like courses, for all for all the high schools, it would be $231,346.30. Of course, we're adding a 20% contingency, which we may not use, but again, it's just to be safe in case we do go up in the price due to inflation and so forth.
So that number could potentially drop below 200,000.
Yes, yes. This would be the maximum, but again, we are including a 20% contingency. Now, another proposal is to also upgrade the technology. Teachers are now wanting to work with interactive smart boards, TV monitors, electronic device, charger stations, and so forth. And so that would require an additional expense. So if we were to calculate that into the formula, it would equate to $370,817.94. And once again, we're also adding a 20% contingency. So the price could range from $277,615 to $444,981 maximum.
I don't want to step out of my box, but if you can go back to that slide that you had, I saw you had plants in hydroponics.
Yes.
That is still something that's new down here. And I think there might be a possibility of some grant assistance that we might be able to apply to see if we can get that covered.
That'd be great.
And even lower the cost a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because I only know of one place right now that's doing any sort of hydroponics, and that's at Buell Green there in FAR.
Those are few.
And as you're, can I go?
Yes, sir.
As we progress through this, we're not talking any renovations, additions, we're just talking
This is
from
only
your side.
construction material, Mr. Trevino will get into.
I was gonna
that.
say, but you can't have all this with the buildings we have, you can't, I mean, this is no
Of course you
good.
can.
No, you can't.
Nope.
You can't have, you don't need any of this unless you address the structure first.
Space requirements.
We'll get there.
Yeah,
We
He's
probably
pulling
should have
your
flipped it. and
Oh,
talked
okay.
facility
No,
first.
they did this so you can see, it doesn't work, and everybody goes, I have the solution. Come on, guys.
It's part of the plan.
Well, I
Part of the plan,
just
come
want
on.
to clarify, 'cause, yeah.
yeah.
Good job, Vito.
So
It's
again,
just
this,
why I just don't talk anymore, thank you.
I'm leaving you.
I'm out, children.
Okay, there we go.
so again, this is the price for the quote for biology and biology-like courses, which includes AP aquatic science, anatomy and physiology, and AP environmental science. We also gave you figures for chemistry. So once again, basically the same 4 figures for student and teacher furniture, plus the 20% contingency, and then including all upgrades. And so again, you have a figure there, a range from 224,237 to almost 300,000 to upgrade the chemistry science classrooms.
And that's calculated on.
This is calculated on 35, maximum of 35 students per classroom. We know that that's not the average. However, due to, sometimes, due to scheduling conflicts, you may end up with one class that's at 35. However, the average is usually not that. But again, we want to put to the maximum in case you do have a classroom of 35. But again, that is not the average. The average is about 28. And again, these are some pictures of the equipment, of the furniture that we will be purchasing for chemistry.
Did Ms. Garcia approve all of this?
They already had a budget allocated by the board in the prior fiscal year of $800,000.
So it's already,
It's the budget.
Did you get mad?
Within,
Get mad 'cause I told you not to talk?
Yeah, we had
Yes.
800,
Yes.
you still have money.
we have
But
750,000.
So we, again, those same figures for IPC, and as you can see, these numbers are significantly lower because we only offer a few sections of IPC. Most of the sections are biology, chemistry, physics, but again, we don't want to leave any science discipline out. So again, we have their figures for IPC, and again, pictures of the equipment and the furniture that we will be purchasing. And moving on, for physics, again, this is the price here is significantly higher because we do offer a significant amount of science sections, and it ranges from 148,236 to 225,492. And again, you have here pictures of the demonstration, teacher table, student table, and chair, and so forth. And so if we take the cost for each of the disciplines, the different science disciplines, and we add all the totals, the grand total comes out to $671,866.70. This is again only for furniture, for student and teacher. If we add the additional upgrade, that amount increases to $993,743.30. Now, if we add those figures to the $213,000 to upgrade the biology labs for dual enrollment, then again, you have the grand total there for option 1, which would be $885,170, and then for option 2, $1,270,026.
What's in the budget right now?
$750,000.
750. So the additional 550 would come out of, the 450 would come out of this year's budget. Are we making provisions for that in this budget?
Or are you talking about going fund balance?
We're talking about going into fund balance.
Which right now we have, what, as of last Monday?
on the fund balance, unassigned surplus is, it's 11.9 million.
Thank you. Well, this whole thing started with a question about science labs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's long overdue.
And also, some of these campuses have added
coming.
some interactive smart boards on their own into classrooms, so you could possibly deduct some of those pieces of technology The furniture is gonna be the common need across, but on some of this other areas, it might be.
To me, the need is the space. I mean, when we were doing the Avid and stuff, I mean, they're trying to do all these incredible things and, you know, like this.
Absolutely.
I mean, and it doesn't, we don't want to go into Mac High and start cutting up walls and opening up things. Are we ready?
Coming.
Okay.
Perfect timing.
I'm like, it's 8 o'clock, people, get to the
Okay,
good
so
stuff.
just before you go, so just a question for
That's
Ms.
not
Garcia on this unassigned fund balance. Is that, you take into account that we have the ultimate fund balance, right, already?
Yes.
And what is that figure?
It's plus 40 million for the 2 months operating expenditures. That's already included in our unassigned fund
Okay.
balance. And then the surplus is the money that's
In the 11.
above that optimum calculation.
Because you're gonna see a much higher figure, but we've already accounted for much of that in some way, shape, or form. We budgeted out of the fund balance on other projects.
But the 11 is unassigned.
Okay, so we haven't done anything with it
It's
yet.
unassigned surplus.
Unassigned surplus.
Surplus and unassigned.
Thank you.
But she makes contortions with her face when we start talking about spending money, and that's our committee, and it's like, where are we gonna come up with the money?
But because there's other initiatives
I know.
also that are being considered.
So with those initiatives being considered,
where's
what's the
that?
true, if we're, let's just say they all said yes to all that, how much is left over
Is it, can I,
from that 11 million?
If they all
okay,
said-
please.
Yes.
Okay, or
I
airdrop it
think
to me.
the difference is, go back to that slide, Sylvia.
There you go.
So you factored, let's say we decide to go 1.2, so that takes it to 9 million? No, because 700,000 is already half a million.
Half a million.
750,000
Okay.
from that, so it would just be the
450.
457,000.
Okay, so that takes your fund balance unassigned to what, about 10 whatever?
10.5.
What else, what other projects do you have?
It would still be okay, like 11,400. Yeah, about 11 and a half.
I'll meet with you later, I'm
We
just,
have about 11 and a half left in unassigned,
we can,
surplus unassigned, but
but she
now,
says there's some
one other
projects that
thing,
we're
I
considering.
know that
What
on
are those
Monday I
projects?
did talk to you all about the tax collection. If that gap doesn't close on our local tax collection, then that would also come from there. So that's one that we're gonna keep our eye on.
Okay.
That's all right.
Sorry, I found it.
Well,
It's in there.
we'll let you go, because
After
it's 8
this.
o'clock, so she's right.
Okay, sorry.
The next slides will be 3 different options for 3 different layouts. Option number 1, that is the second story at McAllen High School. That would be a complete renovation of the second story of Mac High, which would give us 4 science classrooms that you see on the top left with a connecting prep room and storage area. On the top right and bottom right would be the additional 2 science labs. Those science labs, by code, are required to have 2 exits. So because of the configuration and what the building allows us to do, that is what would be able to be achieved on the second story. On the bottom left, you see 2 biology classrooms, or they could be used for any other science addition, and a general classroom that is constricted because of the elevator that's in that current area next to this stairway that goes up.
By constricted, what do you mean? It's very
Well,
narrow.
we
Long
would,
and
we would
skinny.
have to move the whole shaft and everything from the elevator, and that would be a whole other,
The elevator is required for ADA
yes.
purposes.
What's
yes.
different, though, that to me looks exactly the way it sits right now? What's
Yeah.
different?
It's combining the labs that are at the top. We're losing 2, possibly 3 classrooms up at the top.
That's
Yes,
twice as big as they were before.
and that's now making them,
So,
What's the
I guess
square
those 2
footage?
doors were, those were
Those
2
are 2
separate
different
classrooms?
classrooms.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
What's the square footage of each classroom? Do you know off the top?
It's on there. Option number 2,
Science.
the science square footages are right at the top. I can't see it from here,
1,400?
but you're looking at 1,400 square feet per lab.
Yeah. That's
So it's
double
pretty
a
much
standard size
combining double of
classroom.
a standard size classroom. A standard size classroom is
1,100.
750.
Oh, what's that? Oh,
A regular general ed classroom,
700
yes.
TEA.
Option,
It's got the combined storage in the middle.
Yes.
Where they can, much like the ones at Road.
but that's McAllen, and that's asbestos, that's,
exactly.
okay.
And all that stuff on the right corner, you're not touching any of that?
No, those are the restrooms, facilities that are currently there.
Where it says science classrooms in the right corner?
That is also being combined into one and creating a
There's two
corridor
there
to the back
Okay.
to be able to achieve a second exit to be able to meet code.
It's being combined with the lower right corner one or what?
No,
It's sharing the demonstration and the chemical room in between both
Okay.
to be able to save some dollars and maximize on current space available at that area. Because there's many columns and walls and that have to be adjusted.
A lot of hidden stuff. In the bottom, the center part, that's configuration has changed too.
On the bottom, no. On the first floor, it would stay the same.
The,
In
the,
the
the
center.
two rooms in the middle.
I'm sorry. Right here?
No, that pretty much stays how it is in that
Yeah, there's
that
two
corridor.
classrooms.
Between the two stairs?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's
Yes,
what
sir.
it is?
That's a hallway that's there now.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, those two classrooms look almost as big as those labs. Are those 14?
Yes, but we wouldn't be able to get a second exit
Oh.
coming out of them. So unless we combined them and made them one big one, then you could achieve 2 exits coming out of each classroom.
Could there be a partition there, like in the old days, you could, roll a curtain and it was one room, or, roll a curtain back, it was 2 rooms?
That's an option that can be discussed and talked about and be thought of. Currently, right now, classrooms that have partitions are asking us to take the partitions off and put solid walls
Oh, God,
because
I
the
like
ins-
partitions.
because the instruction is going from one side to the other. Option number 2, which is the next slide, this is, we went ahead and put together a standalone building that would house 4 science labs. That's option 3. Option 2. Option 2 is 4 science labs with 1 general classroom with restroom facilities, mechanical room, janitor's closet, and an IDF room. This would be a standalone building that could be built at each of the 4 high school facilities that we currently have. And this is option 2 that we're also looking or taking into consideration. Option number 3 is another option that would maximize the available square footage of property that is at all 4 areas in case we want to increase the amount of classrooms now that we're going to be doing construction in a building. We would take advantage of the roof, your exterior walls. We would probably lower the price per square foot on this option only because we would be having 3 classrooms tied in with 4 labs along with the mechanical room and the restroom facilities that come with it, and IDF and janitor's closet.
So option 2 is freestanding, option 3 is adding on to the current structure?
Option 3 is freestanding as well, sir,
Okay.
but option 3 is there because it'll allow, that is the amount of space that we have available that matches all 4.
Maximizing the entire space.
And we'll see the different layouts in the next slides to come.
So that classroom could be used for,
The classrooms, if this building was to, let's say, be turned into a
gotcha.
science wing, medical science wing, you could
You
do
could add the medical
phlebotomy, you
classes
could
here.
do
Gotcha.
all kinds of different classes that you want to make that classroom for.
And you're saying that's the maximum size you can go
For that
on the
footprint.
sites?
On the sites that we have available, and I'll explain as we go along.
Yeah.
At McAllen High School, that particular area that we're looking at to putting the large building is the area next to the entrance to the gym, south of the corridor that walks to the gym.
By the end.
And that would still free up the 2 walkways that lead to the gym and the access area.
Where the yellow spot is, that's where you put it?
Yes.
The two yellow spots are the two outer corners of the building.
I love that it's by the bus lane, because you can bus elementary kids over to use it, middle school kids can come use it, Lamar kids
Yes.
come use it. You could have, you know, a really high-end lab and have all the students come and use it.
There is availability there, however, there's some sidewalks or walkways that would have to get modified to match the building. If we decide to add canopy space, canopies would be added in between to address the canopies at the corridors. And of course, we have to look at the fire lanes, fire lines, and the infrastructure that is currently there, which we already have some lanes in that area. The second site is Memorial High School. Memorial High School, the only place on campus that we could possibly put a building that matches the other three locations is on the teacher parking lot on the east side. That is currently, that would be next, not tied in to the new wing, but a standalone building on the teacher parking area. It would dislocate some parking spaces. That can be configured around the building, and then some of those spaces could possibly be moved to the west parking area,
What west side?
where the student and the athletic area is. That area could have some designated teacher parking.
Oh, I see. But it's already packed as it is.
Students could build a park there.
Well, students were moved
I'm
to
kidding.
by the
I'm
stadium.
kidding.
But
This
how
year.
is it the student, those lots, student lots, are they pretty full? I haven't been by.
They are.
They are full. The only one that doesn't get full to capacity is the west side, which is the one by the athletic building.
Okay.
Now, Ruben, there's, I guess that's the bus lane.
Right.
Yes, sir. That's a bus drop-off as well.
If this were an option that we were to decide, could we extend that bus lane all the way to the end of the science building?
Take up more
We would
parking.
dislocate, more parking spaces, but the possibility could be there.
But bus lane is adequate at Memorial.
Bus lane is adequate. Now, we would make a designated pathway to the building from the bus lane. And once the school day starts, with the new fencing that's been installed there, those gates are shut on the bus lane, and then everything would be inside of the fenced areas.
The two yellow, explain
The outer
that.
corners of the.
Those are just the outer corners to be able to know what,
So the blue inside, all of that is one big building?
that's the one big building,
One big
yes.
rectangle.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the bigger building, which is option 3.
Okay.
What's the pushback, and I said it, but I'm just gonna be point blank, of losing those teachers' parking lot? Because I know it's already cramped. I mean, can they be absorbed with the other ones?
But here, there's a bunch there.
What about this other land over here?
Like you two are.
There's some additional green space in the southeast corner of Memorial High School
You can add.
that
add it there.
maybe, we could mirror the parking spaces that you see in front and mirror some of those on that southeast corner,
If the city.
if the city allows us.
Is that section just north of the proposed building, that fills up?
Yes, sir.
They both fill up.
They both fill up, yes,
They
sir.
do. And I mean, I think it's a good location. I'm just curious, if we take those parking.
Yes.
How many spots are we losing? Looks like about 50, right?
From looking at that, you'd probably be looking at about a good 40
Yeah.
spots.
Yes.
There's
20
a
million for
little
parking.
area there to the, I guess that's.
Yes, there's another green space to the north of that parking that
Right before the track.
we could also
Oh,
extend it
that's
to.
right. That's empty.
In
That's
between the
space.
tracks,
That's
yeah.
dead space.
There's a transformer in that area.
There's dead space.
Yeah.
Okay.
The next site is Rowe High School, and that is in the bus lane again, in the back
Well, they're
between
not
the.
using them for the bus.
Be-
stop, though.
no, well,
The buses don't
it's
go
a,
there
yeah,
anymore.
it's a bus, it used to be, but now it's a.
The buses go
drop-off.
to the parking lot where the gym is.
That used to be, we used to have
That's a drop
several,
off for the parents.
Yeah,
there used to be several portables there.
Right.
that area had portables at one point,
It's a great area for it.
and the big building does fit, the footprint fits within that area,
It's perfect.
and it's within the,
And it's
athletic.
locked off, students can walk across there, no
If
issues.
students are there throughout the day.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing, but each building is $4 to $5 million, right?
Right now, with the current cost, let me just go to the next, slide. The next one addresses the Lamar High School campus, and that would sit currently where the portables are at right now. And it does fit in that area as well.
But that one is Lamar?
Lamar, yes.
And what happens to those classrooms?
So
Well, we wouldn't put it there.
we would,
Yeah.
we would have to move those portables temporarily to build the building and then take the portables out and occupy the building.
Is that what's in those portables right now, they're used for science?
No.
It's
No,
classrooms.
classrooms, yes.
They don't have any science labs there.
Yes.
But if we make other moves down the road, this might be moved
Right.
too, so.
Well, and this is
But that could be transferred over to wherever we want to go.
yes. And this is a plan that we can either address all at once or take one campus at a time based on enrollment, and it's just,
Is this building something like a bodega? It's just like a exterior structure, kind of an industrial thing, and you put the modules up inside and you do what you want? Or is this more like brick and mortar foundation?
this is a brick and mortar foundation building, that's there to stay. And the option is, like I said, there's a different options. I know there were some questions on, is it more cost effective to remodel McAllen with everything that's there, or build a new building? In the remodeling, with the requirements and codes and everything that will be met, we would probably be looking in the neighborhood of 1.4 to 1.6 for that remodel in the second story. If we were to build option 2, which is a smaller building, we are looking in the neighborhood of about $1.8 to $2 million for the standalone building. If we were to go with option 3, we might save some on the price per square foot, but we're still going to be in the $2 to $2.5 million price tag
Just for the building?
for the building itself.
How much,
Anything that you think
how
is
much
higher?
were the gyms that,
1.2 for the other.
1.5 for the gyms.
the gyms were 1.5? I mean,
And
in
that
my
was a
mind,
shell, that was just a building.
that's what I'm thinking, like a shell. Like you go to medical school, I mean.
Metal building.
It's
Metal
like,
building.
they're like shells, and then you can do what you want in them.
We have the layout. It's up to
Yeah.
us to say what or
Yeah, you just
how
need
we
all the
wanna-
drainage everywhere, you need electricity everywhere, but you could
Yes.
manipulate it.
There's
And-
different ways, different types of flooring that
Yeah.
can reduce cost. If you want terrazzo, or you
Yeah.
want VCT flooring, or you want the brick on the outside, burnished brick versus just a split face block on the outside, or along with the roof type. We can go to a metal building, which is gonna be more expensive, or have a flat.
I want to ask you how we
flat
pay
roof.
for this.
It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
Well, one of the things that we could do, as Mr. Soliva suggested, we could take out a maintenance tax note. And it would be debt that is supported by our maintenance taxes. Now, the cons of that is it's not like a bond, it's not guaranteed by the permanent school fund. So we would have to be able to sustain the annual payment for that, ensure that we have sufficient tax revenues to keep that money. Right now, we currently have a $2 million payment for our qualified
Yes,
school construction note, which it would be very similar to that process, what we could do. Now, if we, down the road, found a way, or, proceeded with a way that would generate additional revenue, then that would put us in a better position to commit to such a payment.
So let's say it's 10 million, do we put some money down to that, or we finance the whole thing?
You would finance the whole thing.
But when we get our Q-SCAP dollars, we had, because of our very good rating, we could have 0% interest.
Well, that was a program at the time, right?
Yeah.
We don't have that.
It's actually interest, we do have interest payment associated with it. It's,
But, yeah,
It's
it
minimal.
was zero interest in terms of what we were gonna save in the utility. It turned out to be.
that was supposed, yes, there was the payback
Because of the
on
savings.
that was supposed to be with the savings from our utilities costs.
When we talk about looking at something down the road, sorry,
That's okay.
is that the possibility of the tax ratification election?
Well,
It'll help.
if the board were to, to proceed with a zero tax increase tax swap, local taxpayers would not see an increase to their tax bill, regardless whether the measure would succeed or fail. They would see the same tax bill at the end of the day. However, if it were to be successful, then the district would be looking at an additional $7 million in state funding for, up until the state decides to change the funding formulas.
And that's net. right?
And that's every year. That's an
That's
annual
net.
increase of
That's
$7
an
million.
annual increase. Now, in addition to that, in a year, our bond payment goes down another $1 million. So that's $1 million that gets freed up, and then in the next year, it goes down again. So conceivably, we would have that revenue that would no longer be needed for the bond payment, that could be repurposed for a maintenance tax note.
Just a thought, and if we just work it out so we can see it, and then we can make that decision.
So potentially we can pay it off in 2 or 3 years if things go our way.
If you get the extra 7
Right.
with a tax.
With the tax
swap,
ratification.
then you could pay it off in a year and change.
Of course, not all the
Well, it
money goes
depends.
to, right, some of the money.
Exactly.
Right,
It depends
right.
on how much of that
But let's say
additional state
3,
revenue.
1, yeah.
But if you
We're
pull the
getting close
trigger
to 3,
before
4
planning
years.
anything else, you could do it.
Yeah.
Mr. Fiona, the thing I was going to remind you is that as part of our master plan, we had recommended putting an addition on at Mac High to address the overcrowding, right? By doing either option 2 or 3, you have done that. You've added that extra classroom space, which is
And it's not
addressing the
$1
need.
million.
And you've kept the space on the second floor that keeps, that enrollment space available and up. And you've also addressed the need for high-quality science labs, which you certainly don't have there now. So you're kind of like getting a Scrabble triple word score, if you will, by taking either option 2
And every
or
kid, every kid's
3.
affected too by this. I mean, if we go this route, every kid's gonna go through that lab.
Right.
Every one of our child's, whether,
Right.
yeah.
But keep in mind, we're talking facility installers on the side,
Yeah,
and
sorry.
instructional on the
Children's
side.
Right, right.
There's the 2 amounts.
All right?
It's not easy anyway, but we're coming up with options that are palatable. They may not taste best, but they're some doable things.
Mr. Fiona, if I could say one last thing, I'm kind of stepping in.
It's not gonna be your
but-
last thing.
Oh,
Go ahead.
gosh, I've been here so long, he knows me.
You're part of us.
Part of what we see in places is some places that have chronic pain. If you've ever had chronic backache or chronic something, chronic pain is very debilitating. And you get so you're used to it and you're just living with it, but it really wears you down. And there's a huge difference between chronic pain and acute pain. And it kind of goes along with what you were saying before, Mr. Saldivar. It is hard to decide to not keep a building. It's especially a building that's currently in use. The old Austin and the old Thigpen, those are buildings that you've already made some decisions about, and no one's going to love that building and come out with their pitchforks and their posters. But buildings that kids are in is hard. It's much harder to make that decision to do that, and I commend you for your willingness to even think about it. But I also want to remind you that there's a huge difference between chronic pain that happens year after year after year, and ripping the Band-Aid off and kind of making that first step to really kind of set you in the right trajectory into the future. And I have a lot of confidence in the capacity of the folks sitting around this table. I've gotten to know you well and have appreciated both the seriousness with which you take this and the thoughtfulness with which you make decisions. And if I can be of any help, I'd be happy to. But
No.
Quick question, if you were given a green light, what kind of turnaround on one building?
I asked a question based on where this is at now, which is a little bit past the design development stage. Schematic is passed, now we're at the design development stage. The next phase would be the bidding phase and completing the design development and having the board approve the design with the plans and specs that we would be going out for. We could possibly have something ready to go within 60 to 90 days, fully complete, to be able to bid out And we are looking at construction of a standalone building like this, possibly in the neighborhood of 9 to 12 months, weather permitting, and that everything is in place.
So 18,
From the date that we issue a contract to a contractor.
18, 19 schools.
I think the only problematic one is Lamar, because if we're gonna potentially move it, do we want to?
Yeah, I wouldn't touch Lamar, I would just do the three comprehensives.
That's one structure, that projection.
That is one structure. One comment that, that was made and something to think about is that there could be a possible 15% savings if all four buildings were either built at the same time and you assign them to one general contractor, being that it's the same footprint, it's the same material that's gonna be needed for every one. And there could be some potential savings from both the side of the design development team and the construction side. And that might equate to about 15 or 20% savings at the end of the day.
And if you do the remodel job up on the second floor, what are you looking at?
The remodel job at the second floor, you're looking at a good, because of the students and the safety areas that have to get barriered off, cut off and all of that, at least a full 12 months.
So same thing
Yes.
starting next year?
Yes.
Does anyone want to entertain a thought of going out to philanthropists and seeing if they want to name that science building after them? You know,
The Danny Bella?
the Bird Ogden, you know how he has a school of
I just ran
business,
out
the
of
Redwood
money.
Home School of Business, that we have this UTRGV Medical School, maybe, you know, the hospital would want, McAllen Medical Center Science Building, or something like that. Name it for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I mean,
Why not?
I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean,
We can continue, if we agree,
Yeah.
we give direction to continue.
Can't hurt.
And then
Right.
during the same time as we are out doing what you just said, I agree with you.
yeah,
I think it needs to be a time certain.
a time certain, but yeah, call it, but,
The other direction or the other portion to this is, do we continue with the design of the building for a standalone? Is
I
that
think
the
you're hearing
best
three.
option?
I think we're hearing option 3,
I'm for the standalone.
A standalone.
which is option 3, right, or
A
option 2?
larger footprint though?
The larger footprint?
I prefer
Which-
the
which-
larger
which-
one. We're gonna do it, we might as well go
Yeah.
pay a
Okay.
little extra.
Yeah, cement is it.
Option 3. I mean,
Okay.
Anybody see it different?
I don't.
I don't.
Mr. Villa?
Well, I mean, it's economies of scale, you're leveraging that, so
Yeah, might as well.
you're already there, it's gonna cost you
Well,
more
what she
money
said,
to
we're already,
do it
That's right.
second time.
We wouldn't
around.
lose any classrooms in the second story, we would not have major modifications. The modifications that we made, could be made up there, once we have new science labs built, we go in there and
Yeah, take
redo
them all
everything
out. Yeah, they
in-house.
have actual-
We take out cabinetry, we take out
Create
everything
great
that's there,
spaces up
and
there.
make them bigger classrooms than what they are right now. And all of that could be done in-house.
What we're looking at, the addition wise, is that a single story?
Single story, yes, sir.
They're all these things.
Dr. Gonzalez, how soon do you want to bring it to us?
As soon as possible, I need to get
We have a
with
meeting
Ruben
on Monday.
and Dr. B, and then we can set up, I'd like to set up a second workshop.
Okay.
So
If anybody would want to tour some of these science labs, the architect that is currently under contract working on these science labs, it's the same science labs that the Mid-Valley campus is building for STC, over at
For a
STC.
university?
So this is something that is almost tied in with the STC model or footprint. So those are almost nearing completion, and he's made them available to us or anybody that would like to go and walk them
Westlaco?
in Westlaco, yes, sir.
In the budget that we have, which is the budget that you recommended fits into option 3?
For the instructional materials?
Right,
That is the budget that we currently have, the balance of
the 750.
750,000.
Okay.
Wait a minute, the money to pay for this isn't available yet.
No, and I was gonna bring that up, timeline-wise,
We're on
you
the
know.
same page.
No, I
Right.
meant the Frencher, Danny.
No, I'm talking about the buildings.
As
That's-
far as, design, we can conceivably pay for the design documents and go out, but
Yes,
going
for
out for
design.
bid, we can't do that until we've
Until we do a
already.
budget amendment.
No,
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 the
for the
money's not
10
even there to pay
million.
for it.
Yeah, the voters haven't approved, y'all haven't ordered an
And,
election.
and we aren't down in
All
the
of it.
debt category to repurpose that money yet.
Right.
We're still about
So we're
2 or 3
talking-
way, 3 years
2020.
away.
Well,
2020 is the first.
we could conceivably bid it out 18, 19, if it, maybe in the fall, late fall of
But-
18, 19.
But you'd have to start paying for it.
And 19, 20, well, if it was part of
We
the
won't have all of the money
TRE,
available.
if it was part of the TRE, you wouldn't go out for the maintenance tax note until you were sure that the tax swap was successful.
And you have to start collecting it, is what he's getting at.
Yeah, you don't have
Just the
the money.
fact you passed it, you still gotta collect it to then have it, which is another year of collection, is what Danny's saying.
And it won't take effect till 19.
Right,
It's not an 18 effect.
right.
It would take effect 18, 19. How that would work is we would have the regular budget at our
Now,
current
I'm talking
tax
about the
rate.
tax.
The tax
The
collection.
additional 7, would you get it this year?
You would get it 18, 19 after September, so there would be a.
In the next budget for the state?
Yes, there would be an adjustment with the state. So we would be able to use the 7 million in 18, 19. So once the district was sure that there would be that increase in state revenue, at that point, you would secure the maintenance tax note. And
You
then.
can borrow money.
Or you can borrow, I mean, or you can bite your tongue and say, I'm gonna dip into below that threshold, knowing that in a few months, it's gonna be recouped anyway and replenished back in. I mean, their districts have had to do that.
For the first year payment, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, you could.
You could.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, we're at.
You would go below your optimum fund balance for
Well,
that 1 year.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily, because I mean, you're
We're
like
still
at 12
over.
million, so I mean, unless you plan on spending that much between now and then, you really wouldn't be dipping below the optimum.
Well, I'm suggesting if we had to, you know you're gonna recoup it rather quickly and replenish that. So it's not
Yeah.
like you're gonna be,
Throughout the year.
just like when we started out, we were 12 million fund balance period.
And there's not another pressing, thing out there, can't think of the word that we're discussing, so this is, I mean, a project, thank you. I would consider that as well too, because the sooner we get our kids into it.
So it would probably be 19, 20, maybe second semester, Ruben, I would think, opening 19, 20, second semester.
Just depends on the start date.
If you start bidding in October of next year, or 2018, October 2018.
Anyway you cut it, you're still looking at that.
October?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Board
I'd say
approval January.
You could sell it as part of your
So
tax swap.
yes, 9 to 12 months would be spring
Yeah.
of the following year, 19, 20.
And what's the soonest we could go out for a tax swap? You have to give 30
May,
days notice, 60 days notice?
You could go, the earliest you could do is May through December is the time frame. However, September is the best time to do it because, well, it's the beginning of school year.
It's the best time to do it
May-
based on?
Based on historical tax swap elections and success rates. At least two individuals that, that do this for a living have already expressed that the best timing is September.
You have
I
to
just,
stress that it's a net zero.
yeah, but
Net zero, and we would not be asking for the full state maximum on the pennies. We'd still be leaving some pennies on the table. So,
see, I disagree with that time frame. I think the further away we are from November, the better we are, because people, they might get confused, and you can't allow for confusion, because this is just like in the board meetings, we've done it twice already that I've been on the board. We switch it, and it's, it's no big deal. You don't feel anything, but because of the way we're doing it this time, we have to take it out for an election. But there's still no raise, it's still nothing, so we might as well just get it done, do it now, and start going. It's my
If
personal
we're able to
thoughts.
do it in May, I would think.
You only have 60 days to prepare.
I mean, to me, you call it, you do it, boom, everyone's like,
Call
okay,
it in
it's-
June, it'd be September.
But there's a psychology involved with it too, and the psychology favors September.
Yeah.
I'm
on a
serious,
governor-
no,
but on a governor year cycle,
but there's no elections in September. It would be the
no,
only,
but there are in November.
no, but it would be September. That's what she's talking about.
Yeah, I just worry about the
it
rhetoric
would be
going around.
September 8th, early September. This
Not that
is-
you're planning. but you
No,
have a
not
date
that I'm
already.
planning, I mean, we've only
That'd be pretty good, Dave.
talked about it for years.
The way we thought
I
about
mean,
it.
we've looked at hundreds of options, and this is one option that we've obviously
the best
researched.
option.
It's kind of a no-brainer because, you know, the question to the taxpayer would be, would you like $1.15.5 tax rate and no state revenue increase? Or would you like $1.15.5 tax rate and $7 million every year in additional state revenue for your community and your students? So you do the math, I mean, it's really a
Yeah.
no-brainer, but as far as time frame is concerned, this is where, why Ms. Ali said that I would recommend that the board have some conversations with an expert that has done this, at least for that portion of it, to get that initial planning advice. And then, of course, it'd be up to you all how far you wanted to take that.
And the other part of the 7 million is if we don't claim it, the state
to
sends it
somebody
somewhere else.
Yes.
So
That
it's
is,
two,
So
those
it's-
2 pennies,
So
right?
it's,
You
yeah,
gotta go get it.
just we claim it.
Yeah.
I think we have to be in a position, not in June, we have to be in a position no later than the end of April. So that you have time to have public comments, you have time to get out and network and have meetings with the various groups to lead up to the board calling, in my opinion. The other is, I think all the things we've been talking about, they gotta be starting to be put on the agenda for actionables. If we're gonna go with these science labs, then we gotta have that as an actionable within the next 30 to 45 days to meet that timeline. And then I think, as we've said this before, you know, those of it on the board, we've never done it, and it's sad because we spent a lot of money on Row, and nobody knows it happened because it was all above the ceilings. And we talked about putting a sign up front saying, you know, construction going on for this, this, and this, and we didn't do it. I think the best advertising is not campaign signs. The best advertising is, this is how your tax dollars is getting worked. So if we're gonna do the science labs and we approve those, there needs to be a sign going up on these campuses saying, you know, state-of-the-art science labs are going up. And it's gonna be 18 months from now, but the sign will be there knowing that everybody knows come June, if we decide to pull the trigger, it's already up. And people are seeing it, people are observing that these are the things, and as we talk about it, we are more comfortable to say, because we know and they can see it visually, what we're about to do. Some of us are tactile and some of us are visual, and I think you're gonna have to go with a population that is tactile. They got, you know, think about this and think of what it might look like, and this is what it's supposed to. Now they see a sign saying with a rendition what it's gonna look like, it's a little bit more real.
Plus, I like that it impacts every kid, K through 12, because it's not just, it's a standalone, so we can drive all of our kids there to use that facility.
Yeah.
Well, and another thing for me is knowing that we go from TRE, what's the money gonna be used for? We have a story already that, like what Danny said earlier, we can just tell the community this is what the money's going for.
That along with the other decisions that we've been talking
We
about.
started off the conversation with recommendations that those need to be incorporated into the plan of action.
Exactly.
Now, other things we've talked about is the other baseball fields at Memorial and Rowe to match what we did at McAllen, along with the softball fields, and we also had conversations about the ag park.
And the auditoriums.
And
The
all that.
The auditoriums as well.
So those are other
So
big
we all need
subjects
signs
that
for those.
We have to prioritize to see.
Oh, I got you.
Because it talks about everything. I mean, right now, the general feel is that it's all about sports. So here we are talking about science lab, academics. We're talking about auditoriums, fine arts, also academics. Those have to be the leads. But I could be wrong.
All right, any further discussion? Any other comments, questions, concerns?
We don't, I stated earlier we need a workshop, but we already had a conversation now, so we have no action.
No, I think we need another workshop, because one thing we didn't talk about is population.
Yes.
Yeah, we didn't talk about,
We didn't talk about,
That
aside from the
at all.
couple of moves we've been talking about here,
yeah, one of the recommendations was collapsing and repurposing
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
and
We didn't get
rezoning.
there.
We need to get into
No,
that.
I hear you, but as far as a workshop on this, what we talked about today, we have a good head start.
yeah.
Yeah.
You can come back with stronger figures and.
On the
But
master
we need,
plan, you
yeah,
have 3
quickly
scenarios.
the population.
So we have a,
Quickly.
about a month
Yes.
out. Would that be reasonable or soon?
That master
We
plan.
have a
say
board
sooner.
meeting on Monday. Is Wednesday night,
Monday, Wednesday?
That might be too fast.
Wednesday the 7th?
I can't.
You need more time?
They gotta prepare.
Yeah.
How much time do you need? 3 weeks, 2 weeks?
The 28th of March?
I
Plus
promised I
the
wouldn't
7th,
say
we have
anything
Region
more.
1 grassroots.
I promised I wouldn't say anything more, but
Here she comes again.
No.
in the master plan that you were all sent, and there is, after the Phase 1 recommendations, there's a really important paragraph that you read that says you have to pay attention to what's happening with enrollment. You can't just assume that it's going to turn out like it did, and I showed you a graphic on that. But right after that, we have made some recommendations on some consolidations that you could choose to think about. They're based on our review of where schools are and where the zones are and all of that. They may work, they may not work, but we know for sure that your community said, good heavens, don't do a domino, moving kids all the way down the district. That works, but it isn't very effective. But there are some solutions in there that might jumpstart your conversations, and I just wanted to make sure I called that to your attention in that, because we didn't present them tonight as a piece of this, but they're in that document that you received.
All right.
That could be in 2 weeks from now. It could even be next week, because it's already in the plan. You just gotta take out those pages.
Do Wednesday afternoons work for everybody?
I can make it work.
so.
Yes, they're
Next
better.
Wednesday afternoon?
No, a Wednesday afternoon.
I prefer the 21st or 28th.
No, but Wednesday afternoon at 6,
This is
Yeah.
good.
This is good.
I'm good with it.
no baseball?
Nope.
What's the earliest, 6 o'clock, is it, can we ever do 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock? Because getting out at 8:30
Yeah.
is hard.
I totally agree, but I don't get out until 5, and we've had such a busy schedule these last couple of weeks that.
Anytime's good with me, so whatever works.
I
for the
skipped
rest
out.
of you guys.
Normally it would be, but right now I'm in a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's 5:30.
So
Whatever works for
when
you
we're
guys.
here doing all this, Natalie, does she get off like all day Friday, all day Monday? She was here Monday night, she was here last night, does she?
She gets overtime, no?
Oh, you get over, oh, okay, as long as you get over, I didn't think you get overtime. I was like, oh my God, we have her here again.
Yeah, we'd be back.
Oh, well, then stay here till 10, girl. Take a long
The
time.
only people not getting paid in the room are us trustees. You missed out.
Okay, so everybody's paid for it. That was my question, is everybody getting paid? Because I don't like doing night meetings and taking advantage, so.
All right. Well, with that being said,
What are we looking at? The 7th? Or the 14th are we looking at?
14th is spring break. It would have to be the 7th.
Oh, yeah.
The 7th's too soon.
7th or the 21st?
I can't do the 7th.
We'll do it the 7th.
Well, we want it done right, so let's go to the 21st.
I can't be at the 21st, but that, y'all go ahead, I can, maybe zip in.
Well, if you want to do 7th, do it. I won't do.
21st, 28th.
You can do the 21st and I'll zip in later, I cannot come to the 21st, that's my daughter's birthday.
So 28th.
You have more than one daughter.
She said dog.
I do, I have 4.
The only problem with that is, you know, again, if you were listening to timelines,
Right.
that puts us in a crunch.
Yeah.
And let's do the 7th.
7th, we have it says we
Not
have Region 1
for,
training.
not for talking about population, it's already in the manual.
We have a training on the
grassroots.
7th, grassroots Region 1 training. And then the 14th is spring break.
21st?
We haven't moved yet.
No, grassroots Region 1.
That's from 5 to 6.
It's that PowerPoint that we go to and it's horrible.
But I have mine listed as canceled.
That's
Was
a different
grassroots
one.
canceled?
No, it's not canceled.
That's a different one.
Region 1, that's,
I wasn't planning to go to it this year.
I got it, okay.
It's so boring.
There's another
I
one
wasn't
from
planning
6,
to this year.
6 to 9.
I mean, if we're not going and if the 7th is good for you.
To me, you know, given what we're faced with, I'd say, you know, we skip the grassroots and focus on what we gotta do.
You know what? That's fine.
Because I've been doing it for all these years, and
You get nothing out of it.
If
it's more work, if anything else.
if I can get earlier flight, I'll be here a little late, but I can be here the 7th.
You can even call in.
Oh, that's true. Okay,
Because on a workshop, you don't even have to do video, you
Right.
can just call.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at March 7th, 6 to 8 p.m. again, a week from today.
Got it.
And you're gonna go into the manual and pull out those
Yes, sir.
sections. If you could send it to us, the sooner the better, so we have a chance to digest it.
You got it.
It is Texas Public School Week. We have open house going on today, tomorrow, and Friday.
HEB will be here tomorrow.
HEB will be here
I walked
tomorrow.
off the hotel and left the
So,
binder sitting on the front
Looking
desk.
for luck
The
there.
whole
All
report.
right, if no other business is to be discussed, can I get a motion to close the workshop?
Move.
Can I get a second? Thank you very much. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes carry 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.